Chapter 979. After a burst of ecstasy, Yan Zhuixing knelt in front of the pool of blood and cried again. No one knew what sad thing he was thinking of. The hipster, who was pushed to the ground by him, supported his body with some pain. Obviously, he was hurt by the fall. Looking at Yan Zhuixing, who was crying, her expression was very complicated. Then her eyes fell on the ground in front of him that had condensed into a dark red color. On the ground, the blood had solidified. After the demonic blade rotated for a while, it left a strange picture. If one looked carefully, they would find that it was a macroscopic map of mountains and rivers. The demonic blade that had stopped rotating stood quietly in a certain position. There was a faint red light constantly flashing in that position. After crying for a while, Yan Zhuixing laughed wildly again. No one knew whether he was happy or sad. He straightened up, wiped his tears, pulled out the demonic blade, and knelt in front of the dark red geographical map of mountains and rivers to look at it carefully. However, when he saw the position of the demonic blade just now, the ecstatic expression on his face froze. He sat on the ground and muttered to himself with dull eyes, "The demon realm, it's actually the demon realm. The entrance to the demon realm is actually in the demon realm controlled by Yu Qianqiu." This was a huge blow to him. He had finally found the entrance to the demon realm, but he found that it was in Yu Qianqiu's territory. Now that he was afraid of Yu Qianqiu, if he asked him to go to the demon ghost domain, what was the difference between that and asking him to die? The most helpless thing was that the demon realm had always been mysterious to the entire cultivation world. He didn't know the specific situation in the demon realm at all, so he didn't dare to take risks. He was afraid that he would be discovered as soon as he broke into the demon realm. The room was silent for a long time, and then there was the rustling sound of the hipster's clothes. The hipster picked up Yan Zhuixing's clothes on the ground, walked gently to Yan Zhuixing's side, knelt down, and said softly, "Put on your clothes first." Then she took Yan Zhuixing's arm hard, helped him up, and quietly helped him put on his clothes. After she was dressed, she hugged his waist from behind and said softly against his back, "Listen to me. If it's too dangerous, it's better not to go. Isn't it good for our family to be safe and sound together?" Yan Zhuixing came back to his senses and sighed softly. He gently pulled away the soft hands on his abdomen and turned around to hold hipster's shoulders. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. One wrong step leads to many wrong steps. Now, it's not about whether I want to let go or not, but Yu Qianqiu won't let me go at all. As long as I stay here for another day, there's a chance that I'll give myself away, and you and your son will be in danger for another day. With his current power and influence, if he wanted to kill me, it would only be a matter of time before he found me. I know his nature all too well. That guy is vicious and merciless. Once he finds out about my relationship with you and your mother, I'm afraid that not only will he not let me off, he will also not let you and your mother off. Therefore, I must leave. For you and Yun, even if I have to divert his attention. Hipster shook her head in grief and indignation. Is there no one in this world who can control him? Are we just going to let him do whatever he wants in this world? No. No one in this world can be his opponent. Yan Zhuixing shook his head with certainty and said, "It's a pity that there's no place for me in the human world. Otherwise, if I have time to cultivate the demonic skill, Yu Qianqiu won't be my opponent. It's not that I don't have a chance, but I've missed it. Now, he won't give me any more chances. He won't stop until he kills me." Hipster suddenly burst into tears. Yan Zhuixing gently pushed her away, turned around, and waved his hand toward the ground. The blood on the ground immediately turned into ashes. Then, he said, "I should go. Take care of yourself and Yun, Black spirits emitted from all over his body, and in the blink of an eye, he turned back into Shouchen. His body turned into a shadow and flashed away. After flying out of the green wenching palace, he could still hear Hipster's cries. He took a deep breath and quickly flew toward the region of demons. Just as he said to Hipster, with Yu Qianqiu's monstrous power, it was only a matter of time before Yu Qianqiu found him. There was no longer a place for him in this world, and he had no way out. The only way was to find a way to hide in the demon world to cultivate and come out for revenge when the time was right. If it was really impossible, he didn't mind opening the passage to the demon world completely and letting the demons of the demon world out to wreak havoc in the human world. Of course, for Hipster and Yen Yun, as well as his mother and sister, he wouldn't do that until the last moment. However, he didn't go to the demon ghost region without any help. The only thing he could rely on was his changed appearance. He hoped to get close to the entrance to the demon world by deceiving people. It could be said that he spent a lot of time going to the demon ghost region, mainly because he wasted time on the journey. Avoiding the cultivators of the cultivation world was one reason. More importantly, he didn't dare to fly too fast and expose his cultivation. In order to avoid the search of various forces, he took a lot of detours. When he arrived at the demon ghost region, it was already a few days later. As soon as he entered the territory of the demon ghost region, he began to tremble with fear. He had long heard that the demon ghost region was full of demons and ghosts. He was afraid that the slightest movement would alarm Yu Qianqiu. He was very careful along the way. He was gambling, and he had to take the risk. Of course, he still had a way out. Once he met Yu Qianqiu, he would use the blood escape to escape. However, the strange thing was that the entire demon ghost region was terrifyingly quiet. There was no sound at all. He flew stealthily all the way. Although he saw a lot of demons and ghosts, none of them discovered him. After half a day, there was no accident or trouble at all. This made him feel a little guilty. He even thought of turning back and escaping. However, in the end, he made up his mind and decided to gamble. Maybe Yu Qianqiu wasn't in the demon ghost region. Moreover, how could he not take risks when he wanted to achieve great things? He didn't know that Yu Qianqiu had already ordered the entire demon ghost region to monitor all suspicious people who broke into the demon ghost region. From the moment Yan Juexing stepped into the demon ghost region, he was already discovered by a tree demon. This was because Yan Juexing happened to hide in the bushes where he was for a while. Perhaps he thought that the trees were dense and suitable for hiding. However, the tree demon didn't alarm him. After he went far away, it quickly sent the news to the local demon king. The demon king also sent the news to Obedient Island as fast as possible. Humph. You're as adventurous as me. You still came after all. There was a way to heaven, but you didn't take it. There's no door to hell, but you still came. Let's see where you can escape this time. Yu Qianqiu sneered. He had been guarding Obedient Island for a few days. As soon as he received the news, the Heaven Eye Mirror, which was already scanning around, immediately locked on to the person who came. Looking at the stranger floating in front of him in the Heaven Eye Mirror, Yu Qianqiu already determined that he was the incarnation of Yan Juexing. Ordinary people wouldn't dare to run to the demon ghost region. Moreover, the direction he came from was Obedient Island of the 1,000-mile lake. Yu Qianqiu didn't rush to kill him. Instead, he quietly waited for Yan Juexing's arrival. Yan Juexing had escaped twice with the blood escape technique, which had taught him a lesson. The blood escape technique of the demonic technique was too strange. Once he escaped, he wouldn't even know where the opponent was going. Therefore, he wasn't in a hurry to kill him. He wanted to let Yan Juexing come in. He wanted to see if Yan Juexing could escape from the central region of the demon ghost domain. Given how vast the demon ghost domain was, once he used the blood escape, he would be able to escape. If he couldn't, as long as he was still in the demon ghost region, his eyes and ears would be able to find him. He didn't believe that Yan Juexing had so many broken limbs to use the blood escape technique. Staring at the sneaky guy in the Heaven Eye Mirror, Yu Qianqiu's lips curled into a sinister smile. In fact, he was somewhat certain that with Yan Juexing's current cultivation, using the blood escape technique wouldn't be enough to escape from the vast demon ghost region. Therefore, he cast a large net and prepared to wait for the rabbit. With Yan Juexing's current cultivation, it would take him less than a day to fly to Obedient Island at his fastest speed. However, it took him several days to stealthily approach the edge of the 1,000-mile lake. Along the way, he felt that the region was too deep. If an accident happened, he wouldn't be able to escape from the demon ghost region in one go. In the midst of hesitation, he even wanted to retreat. His actions almost caused Yu Qianqiu to chase after him. However, after careful consideration, Yan Juexing felt that it shouldn't be a problem for him to escape. He hadn't been discovered until now. Even if he couldn't escape with the blood escape technique, he was confident that he could hide. This judgment was established on the basis that he was certain that he hadn't been discovered. Based on his understanding of Yu Qianqiu, if Yu Qianqiu had really discovered him, he would definitely rush over to kill him. How could he have waited until now? His judgment was correct. If Yu Qianqiu had suddenly discovered him, then he would definitely have chased after him without a second word, just as he had expected. However, what he didn't know was that when he used the Great Demon God technique to find the entrance to the demon world, he had caused too much of a commotion. This made Yu Qianqiu understand his purpose of coming, so he planned to wait for him to walk into the trap. Therefore, some things were predestined. Seeing that he had returned, Yu Qianqiu heaved a sigh of relief and cursed in his heart. Yan Juexing hid by the side of the 1,000-mile lake for a long time. He silently recalled the location of the entrance to the demon world, then quietly dove into the 1,000-mile lake. After observing his surroundings in the water, he found that the fish were swimming leisurely. Feeling that there shouldn't be any danger, he held the demon blade in his hand and unhurriedly dashed in the direction he remembered. Damn! This guy is really careful. Yu Qianqiu looked at the figure disappearing into the 1,000-mile lake through the heaven's eye mirror and cursed. The heaven's eye mirror was good, but it couldn't see into the soil and water. Once Yan Juexing dove into the water, he could only see the vast 1,000-mile lake, but not the situation underwater. This was somewhat unexpected. After putting away the heaven's eye mirror, Yu Qianqiu, who was standing by the side of the lake, directly dove into the lake. Chapter 980. As he dived deeper and deeper, the azure blue waves slowly turned dark, and the water became colder and colder. His current cultivation was much higher than before, and with the help of his water arts, the huge pressure of the lake was no longer able to stop him from diving deeper. His vision gradually turned pitch black, and he could hear the sound of his body shuttling through the water. Not long after, a faint white light appeared at the bottom of the quiet lake. With his previous experience, Yu Qianqiu was not surprised at all, and quickly scuttled over. A white jade-like barrier of light hung at the bottom of the lake, illuminating the surroundings as if it was daytime. One could vaguely see the underwater mountain range, especially the pillar that rose up to the surface of the lake, the peak of which was the obedient island. The strange deep-water fish that were leisurely swimming in the surroundings suddenly fled in fright from the sudden appearance of a human figure. Yu Qianqiu descended on the light barrier and used all of his power to press down on it. As expected, he found that the defense set up by the 10,000 Swords Demon Monarch was not easy to destroy. He then relaxed and quickly checked the surroundings of the light barrier, memorizing the general terrain in his mind. After identifying the direction Yan Juexing came from, he lightly landed behind a rock at the bottom of the lake. He took out a silver-white straw cape and put it on. After shaking it a bit, the cape flashed with white light, and he disappeared at the bottom of the lake. This straw cape was the spoils of war from the battle with the 4 island sect masters at the mystic immortal city's life and death mound. Its function was to hide underwater, and even spiritual sense could not detect it. It was a good item for hiding underwater. Yu Qianqiu, who was hiding behind the rock, gently took out his divine sword. This time, he had made up his mind to deal a fatal blow to Yan Juexing. He definitely could not let him escape. As for whether killing Yan Juexing would attract the demon god behind him to deal with him, he was no longer as apprehensive as before. Judging from the cause and effect, he believed that the demon god should have some misgivings in the deity realm. If he could directly intervene and help Yan Juexing, he would be the one hiding everywhere, and not Yan Juexing. Time passed bit by bit. The sun, moon, and stars could not be seen in the world under the lake. Who knew how much time had passed? Yu Qianqiu's patience did not go to waste. After the distant deep-water fishes fled in panic, he immediately became spirited, knowing that what should come had come. Hence, he poked his head out from behind the rock to look around. He wasn't worried that the other party would discover him anyway. Under the illumination of the light shield, the magic blade, which was more than 10 meters long, shone with a faint cold light. It stood upright at the bottom of the water and opened a path, giving off the feeling of a sailboat or the dorsal fin of a shark. Yan Juexing stood in the inner arc of the magic blade, holding the back of the blade with one hand, carefully observing his surroundings. He stopped about 200 meters away from the light barrier and looked at the transparent white light barrier in front of him with an expression of ecstasy. He had been on tenterhooks along the way and had finally arrived at his destination. However, he did not let his happiness get to his head. Instead, he calmed down and scanned his surroundings. He was not in a hurry to get close to the light barrier. Instead, he steered the magic blade around slowly. Damn it! Cowardly bandit, you are already here, what's the use of being careful? The invisible Yu Qianqiu cursed in his heart. However, he was not worried. At this point, even if Yan Juexing found something suspicious, he believed that he would risk his life. Even if he wanted to escape, it was too late. However, he did not want any accidents to happen. After all, it was still unknown whether the other party could escape the range of the demon domain in one go with the blood escape. He still had to wait for the right opportunity to deal a fatal blow. Yan Juexing, who was carefully searching around, used his eyes and divine sense to look around. After confirming that there was no problem, he circled around and returned to his original place. There was an excited expression on his face. The magic blade shrank and returned to his hand. He boldly rushed to the front of the light barrier, touched the light barrier with his hand, and looked through the light barrier to see the situation inside. Inside the light barrier was a pile of ferocious stone forest. In the middle, there was an ancient cave door that looked like a cave. There was no door at the entrance, but a piece of iron covered with all kinds of strange runes sealed the entire cave entrance. This should be the masterpiece of immortal Emperor Jin Tai and Emperor of the Underworld Bai Qi. Yu Qianqiu had seen the situation inside when he came, but that was not what he wanted to care about. At this moment, the distance between the two sides was less than 10 meters. The corner of Yu Qianqiu's mouth curled up into a cold smile. He slowly raised the divine sword in his hand. With the sharpness of the divine sword, he was confident that he could kill Yan Juexing in one move. Just as Yan Juexing was about to use the magic blade to break the light barrier, there was a sudden explosion behind him. It was the kind of explosion that came from something moving at high speed in the water. Moreover, it was very close. Yan Juexing did not have the time to react in shock. The magic blade that he used had already disappeared above him like lightning. Boom! With a loud sound, Yan Juexing turned around and was immediately hit by a strong impact on the light barrier. However, the moment he turned around, he saw with his own eyes the scene of the demonic blade being sent flying by a light golden longsword. This light golden longsword was shocking to him. It was the one that Yu Qianqiu had used to injure him last time. It was Yu Qianqiu. A thought flashed through Yan Juexing's mind. I've fallen into a trap. In a flash, he realized that Yu Qianqiu had waited patiently until now to make a move. It was obvious that he had been deliberately waiting for him. In an instant, he understood why he could come here safely. Yan Juexing was instantly scared out of his wits. He knew that the other party had planned to kill him. Even if he used the blood escape, he would not be able to escape from the other party's control in the demon region. What if there was no way to escape? Magic fist. Yan Juexing punched the transparent light barrier almost without hesitation. He had no way out now. He was not Yu Qianqiu's opponent even if he fought. The only way out was to risk his life and charge into the demonic world. Boom! He easily punched a hole in the transparent light barrier, and Yan Juexing rushed in recklessly. However, the moment he rushed in, the long sword that had sent the demonic blade flying quickly stabbed towards him, directly piercing through his chest from his back to his chest. Ah! Yan Juexing screamed. With a bloody hole in his chest, he fell into the light barrier. He clutched his chest and rolled on the ground, appearing to be in extreme pain. The moment he rushed in, the light barrier closed at the same time. Bang! F***CK. The sound of the collision was accompanied by curses. The invisible Yu Qianqiu hit the light barrier and was bounced back. He immediately lifted the bamboo hat on his head and revealed his true appearance. He dashed over and punched the light barrier angrily. However, there was only a muffled sound from the light barrier, and a ripple appeared. The force that he exerted was completely offset. Yu Qianqiu looked at his own fist in disbelief. He could not imagine that he could not break open something that Yan Zhuixing could smash open with one punch. There was no justice in this world. At this moment, a black shadow flitted by and directly broke through the light barrier. It floated beside Yan Zhuixing, who was rolling on the ground. It was the magic blade that was knocked away. Yu Qianqiu glanced at it. Without saying a word, he grabbed the flying sword and slashed at the light barrier. However, when the sword hit the light barrier, it was like hitting a pile of cotton. It could not break the light barrier at all. F***ck. I don't believe it. Yu Qianqiu was instantly enraged. Yan Zhuixing's men could easily enter, and so could the magic blade. Whether it was his cultivation or the divine sword in his hand, they were stronger than the other party, but he just could not enter. This was really absurd. He held the divine sword with both hands and slashed at the light barrier crazily. However, no matter how sharp the divine sword was, it seemed to be unable to do anything to the light barrier. At this moment, Yan Zhuixing, who had a short period of self-healing, slowly climbed up. His chest and back emitted a black aura that wrapped around his wounds and kept healing them. After a while, his wounds were healed. The pale Yan Zhuixing raised his head and looked at the almost crazy Yu Qianqiu outside. A sneer gradually appeared on his face. Then, it turned into a maniacal laughter. He waved his arms high and said, "I didn't expect it. I didn't expect it. Yu Qianqiu, so what if you tried your best? It's a pity that man proposes but God disposes. God is indeed helping me." The laughter inside was unusually ear-piercing to Yu Qianqiu's ears. Yu Qianqiu, who was fuming with anger, stopped his useless slashes. He pointed at Yan Zhuixing and shouted, "Yan Zhuixing, don't be a coward if you are so capable. Come out and fight me to the death if you are a man." Yan Zhuixing had a mocking expression on his face. He sneered and said, "This day will come, but not now. When I come out of the demonic world, it will be the time of your death." After saying that, he turned around and walked towards the sealed cave dwelling in the depths of the stone forest. "Stop right there." Yu Qianqiu held his sword and shouted angrily, "Yan Zhuixing, if you don't come out, I will immediately go to Fuxian Island and execute your mother and sister." Yan Zhuixing suddenly stopped and turned around. His expression twitched and he said with a ferocious expression, "Yu Qianqiu, there is no need to provoke me. I believe you can do it. Go ahead and kill them. One day, I will get it back from you with interest." It was as if he wanted to engrave Yu Qianqiu's appearance in his mind. His eyes were burning with anger. He stared at Yu Qianqiu without moving and slowly retreated into the depths of the stone forest. "Bastard! Come out if you have the guts." Yu Qianqiu shouted anxiously outside the light barrier. If he opened the passage to the demonic world for Yan Zhuixing, the consequences would be unimaginable. Therefore, he raised his sword and slashed randomly. He couldn't figure out which side the demon lord of 10,000 swords was on. The formation that he laid down could actually defend against his own people but not others. After a series of slashes and slashes, there was no effect. In a moment of desperation, a ball of purple fire appeared in his palm and condensed the temperature to the highest. The purple fire palm slapped on the light barrier. This was originally a desperate move because, in his understanding, the power of the divine sword was stronger than the purple fire. However, the strange thing was that after the purple fire palm slapped on the light barrier, the huge light barrier actually trembled. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but let out an eh. He could feel the light barrier slowly thinning where his palm was pressed. In just a short while, the fire palm burned a hole in the light barrier, and his palm directly reached in. Yu Qianqiu immediately shouted excitedly, "Yan Zhuixing! Don't even think of running away today." Chapter 981. When Yan Juexing saw this, he was shocked. He hurriedly dashed to the cave dwelling in the depths of the stone forest, bit his finger, and drew a rune on the iron seal, "Don't run." F***CK. Yu Qianzhou was exasperated. When he came to his senses, he realized that the hole was only the size of a palm, and he couldn't get in at all. But who would have thought that as soon as he pulled his hand out, the palm-sized hole in the light barrier would immediately close up. It was easy to deal with it now that he knew how to deal with it. Yu Qianzhou's body emitted a ball of purple fire, and his whole body stuck to the light shield, wanting to burn a hole and enter directly. Yan Juexing looked back and immediately panicked. It would take some time to use the demonic god technique to enter the demonic world from the seal. It was not as fast as Yu Qianzhou burning the light shield. He immediately said angrily, "Yu Qianzhou, don't force me. If you force me, I don't mind opening the passage to the demonic world by force. When the demons wreak havoc in the human world, no one will have a good time. Don't F***king fool me here. Didn't you come here to open the passage to the demonic world?" Yu Qianzhou was also burning with anxiety. He raised the temperature of the purple fire to the highest. He was really in a hurry, afraid that Yan Juexing would open the passage to the demonic world before he entered. "Yu Qianzhou, I swear to the demonic god that I definitely did not lie to you." Yan Juexing was anxious, and he realized that he had drawn the wrong demonic rune on the iron seal. He was so sad that he almost cried. He had to redraw it again, but the god of plagues was chasing him from behind. Where would he find the time? He then continued to explain as he redrew, "Yu Qianzhou, I don't mind telling you that if I wanted to enter the demonic world before I got the demonic blade, I could only open the seal by force. But it's different now. I have the demonic blade, and I can use the demonic god technique to enter the demonic world from the seal without destroying the seal. Don't give me that. Go and lie to your dead grandfather and your dead father." Yu Qianzhou blurted out. He didn't even consider whether Yan Juexing was telling the truth or not. He just seized the time to destroy the light barrier. "Bastard, I'm telling the truth, yet you don't believe me." Yan Juexing also cursed out of desperation. His tone seemed to be similar to Yu Qianzhou's. He roared, "Do you really want to force me to open the seal of the demonic world by force? Hee hee. These tricks are all my leftovers. Looking at you, I guess it will take some time to open the passage to the demon realm." Yu Qianzhou's face had already squeezed through the light barrier, and he was smirking evilly. His body was about to enter as well. When Yan Juexing saw this, his expression immediately became distorted. "Yu Qianzhou, don't regret it. You forced me to do this." The roar reverberated endlessly, and the demon blade angrily drew a pentagonal pattern on the hard iron seal. Bloody Finger also drew a pentagonal pattern floating in the air, and a spell was cast on it. The floating pentagonal pattern burst into red light, and it burst onto the iron seal, fusing with the pentagonal pattern on it. Damn it. This guy really pretended to be serious. It can't be true, right? Yu Qianzhou's eyes flickered as he watched Yan Juexing's actions. He felt that he was about to break through the light barrier. He thought to himself, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. As long as I kill that guy, everything will be over. Yu Qianzhou. You will regret your actions today. Yan Juexing roared angrily. He turned around and pointed at the center of the pentagonal pattern on the iron seal. He said sternly, "The power of the demon god is invincible. Break." The floating demonic blade suddenly burst into red light and crashed into the center of the pentagonal pattern. First, there was a burst of dazzling light, followed by a boom sound. The accumulated silt at the bottom of the lake floated up. The powerful shock caused Yu Qianzhou to stagger. After he steadied himself, he tragically discovered that he had retreated at the wrong time. The light barrier that was about to shatter had actually closed up again. Yan Juexing suddenly looked back and saw that Yu Qianzhou had retreated. He thought that Yu Qianzhou had realized his mistake and turned back. He shook his head with grief and indignation. It's too late. It's too late. The iron seal on the cave abode behind him had disappeared without a trace. Inside the cave abode, a black light the size of a fist was slowly rotating and expanding. Yu Qianqiu leaned on the light barrier and looked at it dumbfoundedly. He had participated in the Divine Ruin Realm Convention and knew what the expanding black light in the cave abode meant. It meant that the gate to a certain realm had opened. The gate to the demonic realm had opened. Oh my God! Yu Qianqiu immediately roared, "Bastard! What have you done? It's true, why didn't you tell me earlier? Fuck you. I have told you several times. You didn't listen and forced me to do this." Yan Juixing roared angrily. Air. Yu Qianqiu was taken aback. It seemed that the other party had emphasized it again. However, he was certain that it was not his fault. He immediately roared, "With your character, do you think I can believe your words? Then what the fuck do you want me to say to you?" Yan Juixing roared and turned around. He saw the black light rotating like a dark cloud in the cave abode. The passage to the demonic realm had been completely opened. He immediately watched Yu Qianqiu slowly retreat into the rotating black light. He gritted his teeth and said, "Yu Qianqiu, aren't you known as the #1 expert in the world? Then think of a way to protect the human world. I hope that when I return, you will still be alive. At that time, I will settle the old and new grudges." As his voice disappeared, Yan Juixing's figure also disappeared. He was swallowed by the rotating black light and left the human world that he had lived in regardless of his emotions. The grudges between him and Yu Qianqiu had temporarily come to an end, B****. Yu Qianqiu could only watch as Yan Juixing left. He angrily punched the light barrier. If he knew this would happen, he would have disregarded everything and chased Yan Juixing outside the 1,000-mile lake. There was no need to make things so messy. Just when he was extremely annoyed, he suddenly felt that his punch on the light barrier had caused the entire barrier to shake violently. Yu Qianqiu looked at his own fist in shock. Previously, he didn't even have such great power when he used all his strength. How could a casual punch have such great power now? What kind of rubbish construction is this? Could this be a sign that the demons from the demonic realm are coming out? Yu Qianqiu clenched the divine sword in his hand tightly and stared at the exit of the demonic realm. Suddenly, he couldn't help but exclaim. The exit of the demonic realm didn't have any movements for the time being. Instead, the light barrier that had been shaking violently seemed to be shrinking. Looking at the marks on the ground, he confirmed that he wasn't mistaken. Not only was the light barrier shrinking, but it was also shrinking faster and faster. The area of the huge light barrier was shrinking, but the light was becoming more and more dazzling. In a short moment, it had shrunk into a ball of strong light and condensed at the exit of the demonic realm. Immediately after, the strong light quickly rotated and suppressed the black light at the entrance. Boom! A loud sound burst out from the entrance of the cave. The light suddenly burst out and was so dazzling that Yu Qianqiu couldn't open his eyes. After the mountains shaking and the earth calmed down, Yu Qianqiu opened his eyes. Without the light from the light barrier, it was pitch black in front of him. With his super eyesight, he could only see the mud at the bottom of the lake floating everywhere. It was a blur and he couldn't see the situation in front of him clearly. Yu Qianqiu looked around in bewilderment. He put on the bamboo hat behind his head and turned invisible again. He quietly floated towards the exit of the demonic realm. He didn't dare to get too close. He hid behind a rock in the stone forest and watched. He was worried that some expert from the demonic realm would come out. When the floating mud at the bottom of the lake gradually settled down, he finally saw the situation at the entrance of the cave. He was dumbstruck and lifted the bamboo hat on his head again. The floating mud at the bottom of the lake gradually calmed down. Everything in front of him gradually became clear. The swirling black light in the cave abode had disappeared. The seal that Yan Juixing had opened was now sealed by another iron seal with a pattern of patterns. What was going on? It couldn't be an illusion, right? Yu Qianqiu flashed to the front of the cave. He held the divine sword and looked around suspiciously. Then, He touched the solid iron seal with his own hands. He discovered that the entrance to the demonic realm had been sealed again. It was simply unimaginable. Yu Qianqiu felt relieved. However, an even greater doubt arose in his heart. He asked himself what was going on. He walked around the outside of the cave and looked at the light barrier that had disappeared. The place was pitch black. The pearl at the bottom of the lake that had supported the demonic realm for more than 100,000 years had disappeared. He immediately understood. Needless to say, the mastermind behind the demonic realm being sealed again must be the person who laid the light barrier outside the seal. It was the demon monarch of Thousand Swords who had been dead for more than 100,000 years but still exerted his remaining power and influenced the three realms to this day. However, what Yu Qianqiu couldn't understand was, could it be that the demon monarch of Thousand Swords knew that someone would open the demonic realm's seal more than 100,000 years ago, so he made arrangements in advance? If he really had such divine foresight, how could he have died in the hands of Jin Tai and Bai Qi? What puzzled Yu Qianqiu the most was, why could Yan Zhuixing and his demonic blade easily break into the formation, but he himself couldn't break in even after expending so much effort and energy? Could it be that the demon monarch of Thousand Swords already knew that someone in the human realm could cultivate demonic arts? So he set up this formation to wait for the person who cultivated demonic arts to open the passageway to the demonic realm? Then, after the person entered the demonic realm, he sealed the demonic realm again so that the person in the demonic realm couldn't come out? Thinking about it, it seemed that everything was possible, but there were many doubts. However, there was one thing that he vaguely understood. After coming into contact with the light barrier, he vaguely felt that the formation of this light barrier was related to the purple flames in the world. Otherwise, how could the purple flames fuse and break something that even a divine sword couldn't break? There was also the heaven and earth universe formation set up in the eastern holy lands. It was also set up using the energy of the purple flames of the world. These two formations were undoubtedly created by the Myriad Swords Demon Lord. It was very obvious that the Myriad Swords Demon Lord had some understanding of how to use the energy of the purple flames of the world. The heaven and earth Qingquan array was like this, and so was the array at the entrance of the demon realm. Could it be that the demonic ghost immortal execution array and the soul transforming smoke array outside the immortal ascension stage were also like this? If everything related to the demon lord of 10,000 swords was related to the purple fire energy, then would the release of the divine dragon locked underground also be related to the purple fire energy? If this assumption was true, then the things that happened in these places were more or less related to him, and he just so happened to know how to use the purple flames. Didn't that mean that all the blame was on him? Chapter 982. On second thought, he felt that he was just imagining things. The strange places in the human world were all masterpieces left behind by the Thousand Swords demon monarch before he died. They were all targeted at the people of the immortal world and the netherworld, especially the people of the immortal world, who had a hint of unwillingness to die. Looking at the divine sword in his hand, he muttered in his heart. Where did the remaining 9,999 divine swords go? It was said that the demon monarch of swords died in this world, so the remaining divine swords should be in this world. Why didn't he leave any trace? Where did he hide them? If he could collect all the remaining divine swords and control them to fight against the enemy, how many people could stop him? That feeling must be very pleasurable. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and smiled bitterly. He felt that he wanted to be the second demon monarch of swords. It was a bit whimsical. He put away the divine sword and looked back at the sealed entrance to the demon world. He didn't know whether Yan Zhuixing's trip to the demon world was a good or bad thing. Would he really come out alive to take revenge as he wished? Even the demon monarch of the demon world couldn't open the seal of the demon world from the inside. Did Yan Zhuixing have that ability? It probably wouldn't be that easy to come out. Otherwise, the seal left by the demon monarch of swords would be worthless. Even if he had that ability, would he, Yan Zhuixing, really open the seal of the demon world and let the heroes of the demon world wreak havoc in the human world? Yu Qianqiu shook his head and denied this idea. From Yan Zhuixing's previous actions, it could be seen that he still had a bottom line. Unless he had no other choice, he wouldn't be willing to let the people of the demon world out easily. After all, his family was still in the human world. Unless he had the ability to lead the heroes of the demon world, opening the seal of the demon world wouldn't benefit him at all. Brother Yan, revenge breeds revenge. When will it end? You'd better die in there. That way, everyone will be saved from trouble. Yu Qianqiu looked at the seal of the demon world and murmured. He was too lazy to think about it anymore. In short, even if Yan Juexing could come out, it wouldn't happen in a short time. It was a good thing that he was gone. At least the human world didn't have to worry about him for the time being. He then dashed to the surface of the lake quickly. How is she? In Furong's room, Yu Qianqiu looked out of the window for a long time and asked this question. The person he was asking was none other than the enchantress of 100 charms that he had always been in a dilemma. Furong, who was behind him, reached out to hold his arm. She shook her head slightly and said, she doesn't seem to care about what happened that day, but anyone can see that her smile isn't as beautiful as before. What's the point? Yu Qianqiu shook his head and smiled bitterly. It was unknown whether he was talking about himself or the allure seductress. Furong turned around and looked at him. She bit her lip and pondered for a while. She seemed to be a bit hesitant, but in the end, she still couldn't help but ask softly, can you tell me about you and her? At that time, I had just stepped into the cultivation world. Perhaps because he had just recalled this point, when Hibiscus asked, Yu Qianqiu directly told the story of how he met the enchantress until now with a confused look in his eyes. His tone was a little helpless. After listening, Hibiscus was silent for a moment before saying, it seems like Sister Yi really likes you. Yu Qianqiu shook his head slightly and said, in the human world, perhaps I can be considered a relatively successful man. Oftentimes, this kind of man has an irresistible attraction to women. If it was an ordinary, worthless man, how many women would fight to be the first to like him? Especially an outstanding woman like her. I hope she can calm down and not be fooled by the illusion in front of her eyes. In the immortal world, there are many men stronger than me. Perhaps when she sees them in the immortal world, then everything will pass. It's just a momentary impulse. She gave up her position as the sect master for you. Hibiscus gently reminded him, then asked a rather philosophical question. Do you have no confidence in yourself or in her? You don't seem to dislike her. These words seemed familiar. He seemed to have heard them in his previous life. Yu Qianqiu turned his head to look at her in surprise. He smiled faintly and said, it's said that silent people are the best at observing and thinking. I've somewhat underestimated you. No matter when, no matter what you do, I will never underestimate you. Hibiscus lowered her head and softly muttered. Then she raised her head and said, you should go see her. Yu Qianqiu hesitated for a moment, then nodded and said, let's go together. The reason why he called Hibiscus to go together was because he didn't want to face the temptress alone. However, when he knocked on the door of the temptress's room, he found that there was no need. The women were all in the temptress's room chattering, thinking of ways to make her happy. Seeing that Yu Qianqiu had come, the women looked at him and then at the temptress. After the two of them looked at each other, the temptress was still smiling, but Yu Qianqiu seemed to have a guilty conscience as he smiled and said, they're all here. Hee hee. Then you guys talk, I won't disturb you guys. We want to go out and play. Ze had already jumped in front of him and shouted. Yu Qianqiu frowned and said, now that the Heartless Palace's people are watching, it might not be convenient for you guys to go out. Wait for a while. It's so uncomfortable to stay in the room every day. It's so boring. Ze pouted and said. Yu Qianqiu looked at the women and said hesitantly, do you want me to teach you guys a fun game? The women looked at each other, but Ziyi's eyes lit up and she cheered, okay. Okay. Wait for me for a while. After saying that, Yu Qianqiu left. After about an hour, he came back with a box and walked to the table in the living room. He opened the box and poured out a pile of small purple cubes. The women surrounded him curiously, and they all looked confused. They didn't know what it was. Ze reached out and grabbed a handful, and said with her eyes wide open, This is made from the bamboo of the purple bamboo forest. You chopped my master's purple bamboo? Yu Qianqiu did go to the South Sea purple bamboo forest to make this thing. He said disapprovingly, There are so many bamboos, and they can't be eaten. What's wrong with chopping one? Why are you being so long-winded? If you don't want to play, then go away. Who said I don't want to play? It's just that when Master finds out, he will definitely scold me. Zi pouted and flipped the things in her hands. She realized that there were all kinds of patterns carved on them. Suddenly, she said in surprise, 80,000, 30,000, east. What are these lines? Middle, 10,000, south. The women also grabbed a few of them and muttered. There were many patterns that they couldn't say, and they looked at each other in confusion. It seemed like no one could recognize what Yu Qianqiu was making. Wow! Bamboo, it's purple bamboo. I want to eat tender bamboo. Where can I find the tender bamboo of purple bamboo? The wild chicken, who was resting on Wu Lishua's shoulder, heard the bamboo and slowly opened its eyes. When it saw the purple bamboo, its eyes lit up. It jumped up and down on Wu Lishua's shoulder and said, Shui, I want to eat the tender bamboo of purple bamboo. This is my favorite food. Zi immediately bared her teeth at the wild chicken. Wu Lishua looked at Yu Qianqiu awkwardly. Yu Qianqiu touched his chin and said, Wild chicken, how much do you know about this purple bamboo? The wild chicken's eyes showed that it was thinking like a human. It then shook its head and said, I have a vague impression of it, but I can't remember. Maybe after I go through another calamity, I will remember. Bad guy, did you get this bamboo? Where did you get it? Take me there. I want to eat it. Bad guy? Yu Qianqiu sneered and said, If you remember, then eat it. If you don't remember, then don't eat it. The wild chicken immediately flapped its wings and flew in front of him. It begged, No. No. I want to eat it. Get lost. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and pushed it to the side, ignoring its protest and cries. He then waved at the women and said, This thing is called mahjong. I will teach you how to play it now. You know from 1 to 90,000. You also know the north, south, east, west. This is 1 to 9. This is 1 to 9. Red, fortune, white, for short, middle, white. After teaching them how to recognize mahjong, the alluring beauty, Yanyu, Furong, and Wu Lishua sat at a table. Under Yu Qianqiu's guidance, the four of them rubbed the mahjong tiles and stacked them in front of each of them. After the alluring beauty threw out 2 dice made of purple bamboo, Yu Qianqiu began to tirelessly walk in circles behind the four of them, teaching them how to play and the rules of mahjong, with everyone's comprehension and the guidance of the famous teacher, Yu Qianqiu. After 4 hours, the four of them had already eaten, hit, and made up the tiles. They were very familiar with the game. Mahjong was played noisily, and the Great Wall was built and destroyed. Yu Qianqiu looked at it a few times with his hands behind his back. After confirming that they had learned it, he then said to the four of them, I still have something to do. You guys can play slowly. If you want it to be more exciting, you can bring some bets. The four of them were completely focused on playing and didn't have the mood to care about him. They all agreed and some of them even waved their hands, indicating that he should go and do what he needed to do. Yu Qianqiu's expression instantly twitched. He didn't know if teaching them how to play mahjong was a good thing or a bad thing. He shook his head and was about to leave. In the end, Zi, who was excluded from the table, pulled him and complained, Yu Qianqiu, teach us how to play mahjong for 5 people. It's so boring for me to watch from the side alone. Your mahjong only has 5 people to play. Yu Qianqiu looked at her speechlessly. He waved his hand and said, only 4 people can play. He left Zi, who had a face full of resentment, and left. Yanyu wanted to send him off. Unexpectedly, Wu Lishua covered the tiles with both hands and pouted, Sister Yan, don't peek at the tiles. She probably had a good hand of tiles. Yanyu was startled. She could only sit back down and continue to touch the tiles. The others were completely focused and didn't care about Yu Qianzhou's departure. Bang! Play! Sister Shui Air, play! A pheasant's squeal suddenly came from inside the room, startling Yu Qianzhou, who was outside. When he came back to his senses, he immediately broke out in a cold sweat. He touched his forehead and sighed inwardly. I actually taught Phoenix to play mahjong. What did I do? Chapter 983. In the divine ruin realm, in a huge space under a valley, more than 1,000 people were gathered together. Zhang Peng led Yu Qianzhou through the crowd and introduced as they walked, a total of 1,131 temple-colored spiders have hatched. These little things are indeed very ferocious, but as expected, the first person they see after hatching is like their biological parent. Yu Qianzhou nodded slightly. From time to time, he would stop to look at the fist-sized, colorful, and hairy spiders that were climbing on his team members' shoulders. When he got a little closer, the little fellows would immediately scream and wave their sharp forelimbs, assuming an attacking stance. They had a strong desire to attack, and their ferocious nature was undoubtedly revealed. The team member that Yu Qianzhou was facing immediately shushed him. The huge spider that had raised its forelimbs on his shoulder obediently lowered its claws unwillingly. This made Yu Qianzhou very satisfied. If he could not control them, there would be no point in raising them. Zhang Peng also had one climbing on his shoulder. He stretched out his hand and hooked his finger at it. The huge spider obediently climbed onto his palm and stopped moving. Yu Qianzhou tilted his head to take a look and said with a smile, "These little fellows are quite cute. Let's give it a try." This was the second time he had come to see the temple-colored spiders after they hatched. The first time was when he had just hatched and was still in the process of getting along with the team members who had tamed them. This time, when he heard that they could listen to simple instructions, he could not wait to broaden his horizons. Zhang Peng walked out of the team and clapped his hands. Immediately, 10 team members came out from the basement opposite him. Each of them dragged out a metal cage, which contained the young of 10 types of ferocious beasts, including a python, a scorpion, and a toad. Although they were still small, they were much larger than the tiny temple-colored spiders. The army of heroes had already begun to hunt some ferocious beasts in the ruins of God, so it was naturally not a problem to capture some small things. Even though they were still young, each and every one of them was restlessly rolling around in the cages. See. Gua gua, they kept banging against the iron cages. It was as if the nature of ferocious beasts was on full display. Dragging these things out was naturally to let the little colored spiders test their skills. The reason why they did not use the big guys to test them was mainly because they were still small, and they were afraid that they would accidentally die. Zhang Peng gestured to the 10 team members who were pulling the cages. The 10 team members immediately opened the cages and dodged to the side. Almost at the same time when the 10 beasts crawled out of the metal cage, the 1,000 or so team members gave instructions to the temple rainbow spiders on their shoulders. The temple rainbow spiders immediately climbed down from their masters' bodies. In an instant, the group of fellows ran out from under everyone's feet. Their 8 long legs were red with excitement as they charged toward the 10 ferocious beasts. The ground trembled slightly like sifting beans. A large group of colorful, furry, long-legged fellows rushed forward without any regard for their lives. This scene caused Yu Qianzhou's scalp to go slightly numb. Just imagine how it would feel if this group of little fellows climbed onto his body. The 10 ferocious beast cubs immediately sensed danger. They stuck out their tongues, raised their pincers, flashed their claws, and bared their fangs. All of them roared to intimidate the little fellows that were charging over. It did not seem like this was the first time the little fellows had done something like this. They did not charge forward recklessly. Instead, they dispersed with great tacit understanding. They split into 10 groups and surrounded the 10 ferocious beast cubs. They were not in a hurry to attack. Instead, they constantly advanced and retreated from all directions to lure the beasts, causing the 10 ferocious beasts to constantly circle in vigilance. It was as though they could not look at each other. The coiled python seemed to be angered by the little colorful spiders. It attacked with its head and bit one of the little colorful spiders that came over to tease it. Just as it attacked, the group of little colorful spiders behind it immediately jumped up and swarmed over, stabbing their 8 sharp claws deep into the python's body. The coiled python immediately let out a tragic cry and quickly rolled around. However, these little fellows were born with iron bones and were not afraid of being hit. After their claws stabbed into the python's body, they refused to let go. Instead, they opened their fangs and bit wildly. What was even more terrifying was that the little colorful spider in the python's mouth did not take advantage of the python's opening mouth to scream to escape. Instead, it desperately burrowed into the python's mouth, stabbing its sharp claws continuously into the python's lower jaw. As the python rolled around, it immediately alarmed the other ferocious beasts that were surrounded. Seeing how fierce the little fellows were, they all fled. In particular, the giant scorpion's carapace was extraordinarily hard. It used its 2 large pincers to open up a path and immediately knocked over many of the little fellows. However, the little fellows had their own methods. They immediately spat out countless spider webs, forming a large net that trapped the escaping giant scorpion. A group of them desperately tried to hold it back, while another group immediately took advantage of the opportunity when the giant scorpion's limbs were tied up to jump up and use their sharp claws to stab it. In just a short while, the battle was over. The corpses of the 10 ferocious beasts were covered with little colorful spiders, and their sharp jaws were constantly biting. The entire underground space was filled with the sound of their chewing, sending chills down one's spine. Seeing this scene, Yu Qianqiu could not help but click his tongue. No wonder the Ape King said that the Divine Temple rainbow spiders had almost no natural enemies. Once they spread out, it would be a disaster for the other ferocious beasts. He did not expect this group of little fellows to be so powerful at such a young age. Zhang Peng pointed at the little colorful spiders and explained, "We are now consciously guiding and training them, instilling in them the awareness to cooperate in battle. I believe they will be of great use in the future. After a period of time, when they are slightly bigger, we will bring them along when we hunt ferocious beasts. There might be casualties, but the effect of training them in captivity is probably not as good as the effect of training them in actual combat." As expected of someone who had led troops to war. Yu Qianqiu looked at him in admiration and said, "We are not raising them to spin webs to catch mosquitoes in the future. We are raising them to be of great use. Casualties are allowed." "Understood, but there is a problem." Zhang Peng gestured and said, "Master said that these Divine Temple rainbow spiders can grow this big. But how many years will it take for them to grow this big?" Yu Qianqiu immediately took out a storage bracelet that he had prepared in advance and handed it to him. "I have already considered this problem. Inside is the myriad beast pill that is commonly used in the celestial world to tame ferocious beasts. It can speed up their growth. However, you have to control the dosage. Each colorful spider can only eat 1 pill per month. If you eat too much, it might cause them to suddenly die." While the 2 of them were talking, the group of little fellows had already gnawed the 10 ferocious beasts' corpses into piles of white bones. There was not even a speck of meat left on the bones. Moreover, the bones were also full of holes from their claws. Under Zhang Peng's command, the little fellows' respective masters also gave their orders. Immediately, they ran back one by one, covered in blood, and climbed onto their master's shoulders. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws, looking very ferocious. Chapter 984. After watching the little colored spiders hunting and killing practice, Yu Qianqiu motioned for Zhang Peng to dismiss everyone. Then, Zhang Peng led Yu Qianqiu on a tour of the newly built underground fortifications. The entire underground fortifications extended in all directions like a majestic underground maze. It was impossible for it to not be big enough to accommodate nearly 10,000 people. If not for Zhang Peng's guidance, Yu Qianqiu suspected that he would have gotten lost. Zhang Peng explained the reason why the underground fortifications were built this way along the way, incorporating many concepts of war. First, it was for both offense and defense. It could attack at any time and defend effectively. The second consideration was the comfort of the living quarters. It was not something that could be done in a short amount of time to finish looking at the entire underground fortifications. After glancing at half of it, Yu Qianqiu stopped and smiled. Forget it. Let's just look at this. You must have put a lot of thought into this. With the earth spell that Master taught me, building this underground fortifications is not a difficult task. Zhang Peng said respectfully. Master, are you not going to give any suggestions? Disciple's vision is limited and I'm afraid that there might be some slip-ups. I'm at ease with you handling this. I'll leave this place to you. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand casually and then frowned. You have to keep in touch with Elder Nan Ming of Flaming Mountain. Look for me if there's any trouble. Disciple understands. Zhang Peng cupped his fists. Yu Qianqiu nodded and disappeared before his eyes. After returning to the World Chamber of Commerce, he walked out of one of the rooms on the 22nd floor and saw Wei Chuanqiu, Yun Peng and Deming Luan standing at the foot of the stairs talking. Yu Qianqiu was slightly startled. Deming Luan was someone who would not visit for no reason. She must have come for something. He immediately walked and cupped his fists. What a rare guest. Greetings, Master Deming Luan. Deming Luan had just nodded and was about to speak when he suddenly heard a "pa" sound from the other end of the corridor. It sounded like something hard had been slammed on the table. Then, a delicate shout was heard. Bang! Damn it! Who was the one with such a bad hand? Was there a need to shout so loudly when they just touched the tiles? Yu Qianqiu's expression stiffened. Only then did he remember that there were still people around him. He glanced at the three of them and found that they seemed to be used to it. They did not find it strange at all. Clearly, they had been standing there for a while, and this was not the first time they had heard the commotion. Hee hee. A few ignorant women, please excuse us, excuse us. Before Yu Qianqiu could finish his sentence, Ze screamed excitedly, it's burning. It's burning. Little sister Shua, you've lit the cannon. Haha. You don't have any more chips left. It's time for Sister Yan Yu to take over. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Ze was going to take over as well? Little sister Phoenix, it's all your fault. If you didn't tell me to touch it, I wouldn't have been able to light Purple Clothes' cannon. It was Wu Lishue's voice. Sister Shua, I didn't do it on purpose. It was Pheasant's aggrieved voice. Quickly give way, quickly give way. It's Sister Yan Yu's turn. It was Ziyi's cheerful voice again, followed by the messy sound of mahjong being played. Then, there was the pa-pa-da-da sound of the tiles being put together. The four men listened attentively for a while and looked at each other. Deming Luan frowned and said, it's burning? What's burning? Wei Chuanqiu shook her head and said, I don't think it's burning anything. I heard that they've been burning for a day or two. How could there be so many things for them to burn? Wouldn't they have burned the entire World Commerce Association? Yu Qianqiu, what are they doing? Burned the entire World Commerce Association? Yu Qianqiu's expression twitched and he said awkwardly, they're playing mahjong. It's a game for fun. With that, the three of them understood. Wei Chuanqiu's eyes lit up and said, what kind of game is it that they can play for a day or two without stopping? Let's go and take a look. Deming Luan and Yun Peng glanced at each other. The two of them were also curious. With the mentality of gaining knowledge, they followed. Yu Qianqiu stood dumbstruck on the spot for a while before following behind the three of them. When they pushed open the door and entered, they saw four women surrounding a table. In front of each of them was a long strip made up of small purple cubes. They took turns grabbing small cubes from the long strip on the table to replenish themselves. Then, they took out a small piece and threw it into the pile of small cubes in the middle of the table. There was also a woman with a pheasant on her shoulder. She was watching intently with her hands behind her back. When the few of them entered, these women actually didn't even bother to raise their heads to see who had entered. This made Wei Chuanqiu and the other two even more curious. They all strolled over to watch. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He thought to himself, could it be that these women have never played games before? Was there a need to be so focused on playing mahjong? He immediately coughed and said, let's stop for a moment. Let's first greet the seniors. When the women looked up, they immediately stood up and bowed. However, they didn't forget to buckle their mahjong tiles in front of them. This action made Yu Qianzhou's eyelids twitch. He coughed again and introduced them to Deming Luan and Yun Peng. As for Wei Chuanxiu, they already knew him. You don't have to be so polite. You guys continue playing. I'll just watch from the side. Wei Chuanxiu made the decision and gestured for them to stop. Then, she walked to the table and picked up a purple cube to see what it was. Unexpectedly, the pheasant on Wu Lishua's shoulder suddenly shouted, Green bat, put it down. Don't peek at the tiles. Wei Chuanxiu was startled. The pheasant's words seemed to have some effect on him. He immediately buckled the tile back. The Deming Luan looked at the pheasant curiously. He noticed that it wasn't even at the immortal realm, but it could speak the human language. He immediately classified it as a normal beast cultivator because he had never seen a phoenix before. Seeing the women's uneasiness, the Deming Luan lost interest in watching anymore. He immediately said to Yu Qianzhou, come out for a moment. I have something to talk to you about. Then, the four men walked out. Yu Qianzhou asked while walking, what business does the Deming Luan's wielder have with this junior? The Deming Luan suddenly stopped and stared at Yu Qianzhou for a moment. Then, he said in a deep voice, I have the immortal emperor's decree to find you. Ah! Yu Qianzhou cried out in surprise. All kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind. After looking at Yun Peng and Wei Chuanxiu, he saw that their expressions were a bit strange. It was clear that they already knew why the immortal emperor was looking for him. He immediately became suspicious and said, the immortal emperor is looking for me? That's impossible. The wielder isn't joking, right? It's not a joke. The Deming Luan frowned and said, I won't say any conventional words. Let's be frank. The immortal emperor has decreed that you must compose a song and present it to the immortal emperor and immortal empress Ji Wu at the wedding ceremony. That's it. Yu Qianzhou's mouth was wide open. After a while, he slowly said, why? Let me tell you this. The Deming Luan paused and explained, after the World Commerce Association's Miss Lu was taken away by Immortal Empress Ji Wu, Immortal Empress Ji Wu really liked the song she played. Later, she found out from her that the songs she played were all composed by you. So, she asked the Immortal Emperor to let you compose a song that will be passed down for generations to add color to the wedding ceremony. The wedding ceremony is not a child's play. It concerns the Immortal Emperor's face. For this reason, the Immortal Emperor personally listened to the Miss Lu play a few songs. He was very satisfied and praised it as the sound of nature. He also praised Immortal Empress Ji Wu for her good taste. After the Immortal Emperor confirmed from the Miss Lu that the songs were all composed by you, he immediately summoned me. That's what happened. Tsk tisk. Wei Chuanxiu exclaimed and said with a teasing tone, Yu Qianzhou, I've known you for so long. How come I didn't know you could play such a literary thing? You really can't judge a book by its cover. A guy who uses profanity every time he opens his mouth can actually play the zither and compose songs. He can even get the praise of the immortal world supreme. Are you going to show us what you've got? Yun Peng nodded slightly with a surprised look in his eyes. Yu Qianzhou rolled his eyes and ignored him on the spot. He gritted his teeth and said, Lu Yanqing, you're doing stupid things to harm me again. In fact, he really wronged Lu Yanqing this time. In fact, the real culprit was Immortal Crocodile. Ji Wu found out about it from Immortal Crocodile and then faked it from Lu Yanqing. Yu Qianzhou, it doesn't matter if you're willing or not. Since the Immortal Emperor has spoken, no one in the immortal world will dare to disobey his will. You have to do it even if you don't want to. Otherwise, think about the consequences yourself. Deming Luan snorted coldly. If you do it well, the benefits you will get will be unattainable by others. Who doesn't want benefits? Yu Qianqiu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But I don't have the fortune to enjoy it. You want me to make a song that will go down in history? That's a joke. Where did I get that ability? Seeing that he didn't seem to be lying, the three looked at each other. Deming Luan frowned. Could it be that the Miss Lu was lying? That those songs weren't written by you? You can't joke about this. It's not just about you anymore. If anything happens, even the two of them will be implicated. He pointed at Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng. Yu Qianqiu was startled. He said helplessly, I did it, but I didn't ask her to spread it around. He couldn't say it out loud. If he was dealing with an ordinary person, he could just plagiarize one or two songs from his previous life. But the immortal emperor wanted him to make a song that would go down in history. Was there a song that would go down in history in his previous life? Hearing him say this, Deming Luan heaved a sigh of relief and said, since it was done by you, then do your best. I'm not forcing you to do it immediately. There's still half a year until the wedding. Then he smiled meaningfully. This matter will be of great benefit to you. Can't you see it? What benefit? Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Deming Luan said indifferently, how many people in the immortal world can get the immortal emperor's decree to do things? With this decree on you, who would dare to touch you? Plus, the entire immortal palace will have to cooperate with you. Isn't this a great benefit? Yu Qianqiu's eyes suddenly lit up. His expression didn't look awkward at all. He licked his lips and said, in other words, during this period of time, I can do whatever I want in the immortal world? Deming Luan frowned and said, doing whatever you want is a bit too much, but as long as it's not too much. Before he finished speaking, Yu Qianqiu had already rolled up his sleeves and interrupted him arrogantly, Heartless Palace. Damn it. Help me destroy the Heartless Palace first. Chapter 985. What was the singing of a liberated serf? Yu Qianqiu understood it now. He understood it as a song that could change one's fate. This was a release that had been suppressed for a long time. He had been in the celestial world for such a long time, but he had never gone out. Because he had offended the Heartless Palace, he had been trapped in the hallucinatory immortal city. Today, now, he suddenly felt that the sky was high and the earth was wide. He could go anywhere and show off his skills again. How wonderful would it be to use the power of the Celestial Palace to get rid of the Heartless Palace? Yun Peng and Wei Chuanxiu looked at each other. Wei Chuanxiu chuckled, that's a good idea. Let the Celestial Palace get rid of the Heartless Palace first, hee. Deming Luan's expression was already ugly. When he saw Wei Chuanxiu joining in the fun, his expression became even uglier. He glared at him and said in a low voice, Yu Qianqiu, what kind of sweet dream are you having? Did you forget what I said just now? The Celestial Palace will only help you if it's not too much. Too much? Yu Qianqiu asked Wei Chuanxiu instead. Wei Chuanxiu chuckled and cooperated, this really is too much. There are so many sects in the celestial world. One less Heartless Palace is nothing. Plus, it's not difficult for the Celestial Palace to get rid of the Heartless Palace. Yes. Yu Qianqiu immediately followed up. His eyes lit up as he nodded, that's right. It's not too much. Get rid of the Heartless Palace. He almost applauded Wei Chuanxiu. Deming Luan looked up and down at Yu Qianqiu. He could see that this guy didn't have a chance in the past. Now that he had one, he immediately asked for a sky-high price. He wanted to get rid of the number one sect in the celestial world. He snorted and sneered, why is the Heartless Palace so arrogant in the celestial world? Because with his strength, he didn't dare to get along well with everyone in the immortal world. If that was the case, the immortal emperor would have destroyed them long ago. The sect master of Heartless Palace, Wang Qing, knows very well that the celestial emperor wants them to be the vanguard to balance the forces in the celestial world. The celestial emperor can't control the celestial world by relying on his subordinates to kill. Killing can only suppress the celestial world temporarily, not forever. Do you understand what I mean? Yu Qianzhou's eyes flickered, and he said, "You mean to say that the immortal palace can't do many things without a good reason? They're afraid that it will cause conflict, so they let the heartless palace be the sucker? It's good that you understand, but your knowledge is still too shallow." The Great Bright Will coldly stared at him and slowly said, "How do you think the immortal emperor was able to control the immortal world for so many years?" This was the balancing act of a monarch, and it was not something that could be achieved by having a high cultivation and blindly slaughtering. No matter how strong the immortal palace is, they can't be the enemy of the entire celestial world forever. Unless the immortal emperor kills everyone. In reality, the heartless palace has been pushed to the teeth of the storm, and it has many strong enemies. It can only listen to the immortal palace. The immortal palace can wipe it out right away, and the sects in the celestial world will clap their hands. No one will say that the immortal palace is bullying people. If one heartless palace falls, the immortal palace will support a second heartless palace to help the immortal palace do things that offend people. I understand. Yu Qianzhou couldn't be happy anymore, and he nodded. This is a good method. This way, the immortal palace only needs to use blood and iron to deal with a small portion of people. This way, it won't make too many people dislike them, and it won't be the enemy of the entire celestial world. It can also maintain its deterrence towards the celestial world. So, it's not realistic for the immortal palace to wipe out the heartless palace for you. Of course. Deming Luan sneered. If you, Yu Qianzhou, have the ability to replace the heartless palace in the celestial world, I think the immortal emperor might agree to help you wipe out the heartless palace and make you the second heartless palace. But with the World Commerce Association's current strength, the immortal emperor probably won't even consider this request. After all, the charm of a song from you, Yu Qianzhou, isn't enough to mess up his empire. Damn! If I had the power to replace the heartless palace, why would I need the immortal emperor's help? I would have done it myself. Yu Qianzhou laughed at himself. Wei Chuanxiu snickered. Yun Peng snorted. The human heart is indeed the most sinister. Actually, it doesn't matter to you whether you wipe out the heartless palace or not. You've accepted the immortal emperor's decree. At least the heartless palace won't dare to do anything to you now. Even in the entire celestial world, not many people would dare to do anything to you. Deming Luan said with a hint of ridicule. Yu Qianzhou didn't hold back anymore. Since the Deming Luo was willing to say such things to him, he didn't have anything to hide. He immediately asked, "Then what about after the immortal emperor's wedding? Can he still guarantee my safety?" You're really thinking far ahead. Deming Luan couldn't help but say, "If you make the immortal emperor happy, no matter who wants to harm you, they will have to consider the immortal emperor's emotions. It shouldn't be a problem to guarantee your safety for a year or two. Or, as long as you're brave enough, when the immortal emperor gives you a reward, you can talk about the conditions. Ask him to guarantee your safety for the rest of your life. That way, no one will dare to touch you in the future. Talk about conditions with the immortal emperor?" Yu Qianzhou was suspicious and asked, "Is there any use? Has there ever been a successful negotiation before?" Deming Luan paused and said, "Most of them died without a complete corpse. You might be an exception." As soon as he said this, Wei Chuanxiu immediately laughed, and Yun Peng also smiled. Only Yu Qianzhou's face turned green and he said in a low voice, "What's the difference between this and asking me to die? Since you can't help me destroy the heartless palace, I want something else. Give me a netherworld token first and we'll talk about the rest later." Everyone was startled and Deming Luan asked strangely, "What do you want a netherworld token for? With your World Commerce's foundation, do you want to go to the netherworld to make a fortune? If it's really for money, isn't this a good opportunity to make a fortune? The immortal palace can't guarantee anything else, but its wealth is unparalleled in the immortal world." "You've reminded me, I want money too." Yu Qianzhou nodded in realization. He would rather eat the wrong thing than let it go. He then changed the topic and explained, "As for the netherworld token, it's naturally to go to the netherworld to collect information." Don't you know what collecting information is? It's useless to ask. Didn't the immortal emperor want me to make a song that will be passed down for generations? So I want to travel around to broaden my horizons and experience. Only by accumulating enough material can I make a really good song. The netherworld is naturally an indispensable place for collecting information, so I want a netherworld token. Collecting information? Deming Luan was startled. Does it mean accumulating information before it explodes? Yes, it means accumulating information before it explodes. Yu Qianqiu clapped his hands and flattered, as expected of the leader of the Commerce Alliance. You said what I wanted to say with just 4 words. Deming Luan ignored his flattery and said, if that's the case, then wait for my news. It shouldn't be a big problem. Money. Don't forget there's still money. Collecting information requires money. It's hard to do anything without money. The more the better. Yu Qianqiu quickly shouted. However, Deming Luan had already left, so he didn't know if he heard it or not. You can do whatever you want in the celestial world now. You can do whatever you want with Jintai's decree. Hee. Wei Chuanxiu twirled his mustache and laughed. Yunpeng felt bored and left in a flash. Yu Qianqiu seemed to have thought of something and didn't listen to Wei Chuanxiu's joke. He walked around the corridor and suddenly frowned. Bat King Wei, since Deming Luan received the decree directly from Jintai, do you think this news has spread in the celestial world? Wei Chuanxiu was startled and said, it probably hasn't spread out yet. But do you hope it has, or do you hope it hasn't? Of course I want it to spread. No, I have to ask someone to help me spread the news. Yu Qianqiu thought for a while and then left excitedly. Wei Chuanxiu was left alone in the corridor. Just as he was about to go back to where he was supposed to go, he suddenly heard a sound of something hard hitting the table. Ziyi's extremely wild laughter came. Touch yourself. Touch myself? Wei Chuanxiu's mouth twitched. He sighed and shook his head. The words of girls nowadays are really scary. Although he said that, he couldn't help but feel curious. He slowly walked towards the place where the splashing sound came from. In the hall of the first floor of World Commerce, Yunnan Tian was inexplicably found by Yu Qianqiu's people. Have you heard any news about me recently? Basically no. Only Tsanyan Xian of the Heartless Palace released some harsh words against you. He said that he will tear you into pieces and grind your bones into ashes sooner or later. Damn. Old bastard, wait and see. Let's not talk about him. That. Is there any news that Immortal Emperor Jin personally issued a decree for me to compose a song for the wedding of Immortal Emperor and Immortal Empress Ji Wu? Immortal Emperor personally issued a decree for you. How is this possible? Where did the punishment master hear this from? Bullshit. This is not a rumor. This is reliable news. Here's the thing. Just do this for me. The two hid in the corner of the hall and whispered for a while, causing others to look at them from time to time. They didn't know what the two were plotting. In the end, Yunnan Tian happily walked out of World Commerce. No one knew what he was going to do. Actually, what Yu Qianqiu asked him to do was very simple. He just wanted him to spread the news that Immortal Emperor Jin ordered him to compose a song, the kind that had to be widely spread. As for the purpose, it was also very simple. He thought that after being suppressed in the immortal world for too long, it was time for him to hold his head high. It would be a pity if he didn't take advantage of such a good opportunity. However, he was afraid that others didn't know about such a big matter. It would be bad if he was accidentally hurt, so he wanted Yunnan Tian to go out and spread the news. Today, he was very patient. He walked around with his hands behind his back for a long time. When Yunnan Tian came back, he hurriedly went up and asked, "Has the news been spread?" The news spread very fast. It has already started to reach my ears. Yunnan Tian smiled. Not bad. Not bad. You do your thing. I'm going out for a walk. Yu Qianqiu whistled and walked out of World Commerce with his hands behind his back. Looking at his behavior, no one knew what he wanted to do. Chapter 986. The mountain spring flowed down the waterfall. Under the impact of the water, the 4 words, World Commerce Association, were still majestic and showed the vitality of the World Commerce Association. The creator of these 4 words was standing on top of the waterfall with his hands behind his back, enjoying the bright sunlight and breathing in the free air. The waterfall flows down 3,000 feet, like the Milky Way falling from the 9 heavens. Good poem, good poem. The poetic Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but praise himself. He glanced at the 4 people staring at him from the sky. From their clothes, they were still disciples of Heartless Palace. He couldn't help but mutter in his heart. With the power of Heartless Palace, it was impossible that they hadn't received the news. This Qingyun Xian was probably still verifying the credibility of the news. Otherwise, he wouldn't dare to send people to watch him after he knew that he was working for the immortal emperor, F***CKU. Who's afraid of who? I'm the imperial envoy now. A stream of light shot out from the waterfall and flew directly towards the central plaza of Hallucination Immortal City. The sea of clouds was vast and mighty, tens of thousands of mountains stood in the middle, and all kinds of streams of light rose and fell, showing the extraordinariness of the most prosperous place in the immortal world. The plaza was bustling, no different from a market in the human world. The human world sold the daily necessities of mortals, while the immortal world sold the daily necessities of immortals. The only difference was that they were on a different level. The extravagant desire of the human heart, whether it was an immortal or a mortal, all roads led to the same destination. There were countless stalls on the plaza, selling all kinds of things that could be sold. However, the items that were set up here were usually not of a high grade. The truly valuable items were all in the grand buildings at the top of the mountains, but the liveliness of the plaza was far greater than the mountains. It could be seen that whether it was the immortal world or the mortal world, the poor would always be the majority. Those disciples wearing the clothing of the large sects shuttled through the crowd and occasionally stopped at a stall. Regardless of their cultivation, they revealed a condescending aura as they asked the stall owner for the price. Meanwhile, those stall owners bowed and fawned over them, not daring to offend them. Even though they were being careful, most of the time, they were met with extremely belittling and disdainful tones from the customers. Even if the customers were to do them the honor of buying 1 or 2 items, don't even think about how generous these customers would be. It was already good enough if they didn't suppress the price. Yu Qianqiu paced back and forth in the vast sea of people. He smiled and looked at the world with his cold eyes. Occasionally, he would raise his head to look at the 4 disciples of Heartless Palace who were protecting him. Even though he'd stayed in the illusory immortal city for a long time, he'd rarely come to this place. He'd only come here once or twice before the World Trading Company was established. Now that he'd relaxed, he finally had the leisure to come out and take a stroll. People who set up stalls in such places were considered to be the lowest rung in the immortal world. Not many people had seen Yu Qianqiu before. Even if they had seen him once or twice, with how he, Yu Qianqiu, dressed in an unusually low-key manner, who would have seen a sect master with a storage pouch on his waist? In addition to his ordinary appearance, there was nothing special about him when he was thrown into a crowd. If they weren't familiar with him and didn't look at him face to face, they probably wouldn't be able to recognize that he was the sect master of the World Trading Company, Yu Qianqiu. Most people's gazes only flashed past his face and didn't linger. Because of this, his mood became more relaxed as he strolled. In reality, he quite liked to stroll around aimlessly like this. There was no restraint of entering a room, no effort of scheming and scheming. Looking at the hundreds of people, they saw him as nothing more than an ordinary idler. Along the way, he could hear many people talking about him. They were all talking about the matters that the immortal emperor had personally decreed for him to do. Yu Qianqiu ignored them and strolled with a faint smile on his lips. As he walked, he was suddenly attracted by a refreshing fragrance. He took a deep breath and felt his spirits lift. He looked around and didn't know where the fragrance was coming from. This kind of fragrance was very attractive to him. He wondered who was selling fragrant things. It wouldn't be a bad idea to buy some and put it in his room. He cupped his hands and asked a man who was walking towards him, "May I ask this friend, where can I find something with this kind of strange fragrance?" He pointed around and then at his own nose. The man was startled. He took a few more deep breaths, but he didn't smell any fragrance. Instead, he smelled the body odors of all kinds of people passing by. He frowned and said, "Where is this fragrance coming from?" He waved his sleeves and left, treating him as a lunatic. Yu Qianqiu was startled. He couldn't smell such a special fragrance. There must be something wrong with his nose. He then asked a few passers-by, but the answers he got were more or less the same. No one smelled any fragrance. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but be startled in the crowd. He touched his nose and asked himself, could it be that there was something wrong with his nose? But he felt that it wasn't right. If there was something wrong with his nose, he shouldn't be able to smell anything. If that was the case, his nose was unusually sensitive. I'll find it myself. Yu Qianqiu took 2 deep breaths. Then, like a hunting dog, he sniffed the air with his nose and moved around the crowd, following the fragrance. The area of the square was not small, so he spent a lot of time looking for it. The 4 heartless palace disciples in the air looked at each other. They didn't know why he was wandering around like a headless fly. At the edge of the square, the crowd gradually thinned. Yu Qianqiu swayed out from the crowd and sniffed in front of him. He was stunned. Below the cliff in front of him was an old tree with a crooked neck. Its old roots were deeply rooted in the crevices of the cliff. Its lush green leaves extended out like a giant parasol. A white sail was hanging from the branches, swaying in the wind. Huang Xiaolong couldn't see what was written on it. Under the shade of the tree, there were 2 tables and stools. A slightly hunched old man with white hair and a little girl around 13 or 14 years old were serving bowls of food to the customers. There weren't many customers. One of the tables was empty, while the other only had a single customer. Yu Qianqiu's nose twitched again, sniffing again. After confirming that the fragrance came from that stall, he was speechless. He thought it was selling something, but it was actually food. Shaking his head, Huang Xiaolong slowly walked over. When he reached the bottom of the tree, he saw the words written on the white sail, green clear, 1 divine grade spirit stone per bowl. What kind of thing was green clear, selling a bowl for 1 divine grade spirit stone? Yu Qianqiu turned back to look at the square. There weren't many people who could sell something for 1 divine grade spirit stone, not to mention a bowl of food. No wonder business was so bad. Honored guest. Would you like to have a bowl of green clear? An old man in hemp robes walked over, greeting enthusiastically. The old man's face was sagging, his eyes were cloudy, and with a head full of white hair and a slightly hunched back, one look was enough to tell that he was not young. Yu Qianqiu scratched his head, a wry smile on his face. Old man, it's not that I want to criticize you, but the things you sell here are really expensive. Forget it. I came here after smelling your aroma, it can be considered fate. Just take it as taking care of your business. I'd like to try something new. Give me a bowl. Hee hee. Honored guest, please wait a moment. The hunchbacked old man hurried to his counter. Yu Qianqiu sat on another empty seat, looking at the bustling crowd in front of him. The shade under the tree had a different kind of flavor to it. A short while later, the budding young lady in green robes came over with a yellow wooden bowl, her voice crisp and clear. Honored guest, please enjoy. Inside the bowl was a wooden ladle soup of the same color, and inside the bowl was a lush green jelly that was pleasing to the eye. A refreshing fragrance assaulted his nostrils. Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up. It was the same fragrance he had smelled earlier. He hoped this fragrance was worth a divine grade spirit stone. Picking up the ladle soup, he scooped up a spoonful of lush green jelly, but when it reached his mouth, he couldn't help exclaiming in surprise. He sniffed twice with his nose and discovered that the refreshing fragrance did not come from this bowl of green clear, but he tilted his head and sniffed at the green-robed young lady who had just turned to leave. He couldn't resist putting down the bowl and sniffing behind the young lady's butt. Smelling like a pig snoring, how could the green-robed young lady not notice? Startled, she spun around, but seeing Huang Xiaolong's lecherous appearance, she retreated in panic. What are you trying to do? Grandfather. She was completely treating him like a pervert, guarding against him. Yu Qianqiu blanked for a second, looking at this young lady's delicate features and fair skin. It was obvious she was a beauty in the making. When she grew up, she would definitely be a beauty. Huang Xiaolong waved his hand awkwardly. Don't misunderstand, don't misunderstand. No matter how much of a pervert he was, he had not fallen to the point of laying his hands on a young lady. The slightly hunchbacked old man also put down the work in his hands, blocking in front of the green-robed young lady, asking solemnly, "Honored guest, why are you doing this?" The customers at the other table snickered, winking at Yu Qianqiu as if they were kindred spirits. Yu Qianqiu couldn't be bothered with him. He cupped his hands at the grandfather-granddaughter pair. "I'm really ashamed, please don't misunderstand. It was because I smelled a sweet fragrance, that's why I followed it here. I thought it was the fragrance from the bowl, but when I picked up the bowl just now, I realized that the fragrance came from this young lady, so I couldn't help but sniff a few times. My apologies for being abrupt, please don't misunderstand." After saying that, he obediently returned to his seat. The hunchbacked old man's eyes suddenly flashed with a bright light. He sized up Yu Qianqiu with a meaningful gaze, then turned to the green-robed young lady and chuckled, "Lu, don't be nervous, it's just a misunderstanding." The customer at the other table suddenly picked up his bowl and sat next to Yu Qianqiu, smiling as he transmitted his voice. "Brother really has a good eye. The excuse of smelling a beauty is not bad, but there's a first come, first served rule for everything. I saw this little beauty first. I'm Wan Gutong's disciple, my apologies." Yu Qianqiu glanced at the person's robe, but didn't say anything. He scooped up a spoonful of the green liquid and put it into his mouth. As a result, it melted in his mouth, turning into a refreshing liquid that flowed into his stomach. At the same time, his mouth was filled with a natural sweetness that lingered in the aftertaste. The taste was indeed not bad. He picked up a few spoonfuls of the green liquid and slowly savored the aftertaste. Seeing that Yu Qianqiu was ignoring him, the person at the side was about to flare up, but he noticed that he couldn't see through Yu Qianqiu's cultivation, so he swallowed his anger and slapped the table. "Bill." The green-robed young lady ran over, clasping her hands excitedly. Her sweet voice sounded, "1 piece of divine grade spirit stone." It was as if she had never seen money before. Chapter 987. Yu Qianqiu agreed with Huang Xiaolong's reasoning. Although the taste of this green clear wasn't bad, a simple stall selling food for a piece of divine grade spirit stone was indeed a little too expensive. Most likely, no one would patronize this stall. Thus, it was understandable that this little girl was excited when she heard that he was going to pay. What? A bowl of food like this is worth a piece of divine grade spirit stone? That person's eyebrows rose as he slammed the table, barking, "Aren't you trying to scam me? I'm Wan Gutong's disciple, how dare you scam me, are you tired of living?" Watching the bowl in front of him bouncing from the slap, Yu Qianqiu shot a cold glance over. He wanted to see what kind of method this guy was going to use to get his hands on this lass. The lass in green looked at her grandfather behind her in a fluster, not knowing how to deal with this situation. The hunchbacked old man quickly walked over, pointing at the white sail hanging on the tree with a smile. "Honored customer, this is a business with a clear price. I would not dare to scam people." "Not dare to scam people, does that mean you're scamming people on purpose?" That person sneered. "Old thing, you really have guts, daring to scam our Wan Gutong." The hunchbacked old man frowned, then sighed. Forget it, it can be considered fate that an honored customer could visit my stall. This bowl of green clear is a free gift." "Honored customer, please go ahead, Lu." It was obvious that he didn't want to cause trouble. The lass called Lu pouted, feeling wronged. Her hand reached out to collect the bowl and spoon on the table, but who knew that her hand would be caught by that person? "Little girl, you don't look too happy. Are you giving me a hard time?" That person's hands rubbed the pair of soft hands with a lascivious smile on his face. The lass in green panicked, crying out, "Grandfather." She didn't know what to do. Damn it. Disappointing. Yu Qianqiu didn't expect to run into such a situation when he went out to eat. This world was really ruled by evil people. Without a second thought, a kick flew out from under the table, landing on that person's foot. The person lost his balance and fell onto the table. Yu Qianqiu didn't say anything else, and with a "hoo," he punched him in the face. Bang! That person was sent flying several meters away. Blood spurted out from his mouth and nose in the air. The sudden turn of events scared the little girl so much that she shrank into the arms of the hunchbacked old man. She looked at the customer who committed the crime. He was sitting there quietly, eating the green clear in his bowl as if nothing had happened. The hunchbacked old man patted the little girl in his arms and said, "It's okay, it's okay." He looked at Yu Qianqiu and shook his head. The commotion immediately attracted the attention of the people on the square. Seeing that someone actually dared to beat someone up in the hallucinatory immortal city, especially when they saw that the person who was beaten up was Wan Gutong's disciple, a commotion broke out. The 4 disciples of the Heartless Palace who were watching him looked at each other. The person who was knocked unconscious shook his head and quickly got up. He wiped the blood from his nose and mouth. He didn't expect to be beaten up in the hallucinatory immortal city. He pointed at Yu Qianqiu and roared, "Who are you? How dare you attack me, Wan Gutong?" He really wanted to rush up and take revenge, but he didn't have the guts to break the hallucinatory immortal city's rules. You alone can't represent Wan Gutong. Since you ate someone else's food, you should pay up honestly, don't embarrass Wan Gutong. Yu Qianqiu tilted his head to look at the person. In reality, he was also restricted by the hallucinatory immortal city's rules, otherwise he would have taken the person's life on the spot. Don't count on this kind of person to turn over a new leaf. Leaving him alive would be a disaster, so killing him was the best solution. However, with this tilt of his head, under everyone's watchful eyes, many people recognized him and whispered to each other, "So it's Yu Qianqiu." As the words Yu Qianqiu spread, the disciple who was beaten stiffened. Even though he had never seen Yu Qianqiu before, he knew that Yu Qianqiu had close ties with many of Wan Gutong's higher-ups. Especially Elder Wan Gutong, who was in charge of this place. He called Yu Qianqiu brother. Even Wan Wuxing's precious granddaughter, Wan Ling, had frequent dealings with Yu Qianqiu. The two of them had even held hands in the godly ruins realm. This was something that many people had seen with their own eyes. This guy took a beating for nothing. Many people in the crowd laughed out loud. That Wan Gutong disciple rubbed the place where he was beaten, his eyes filled with resentment as he glared at Yu Qianqiu, but he dared not utter a word, turning around to leave with his tail between his legs. Who would have thought that Yu Qianqiu would harumph coldly, "Leave the money for the food to the boss before you leave. Don't tell me your Wan Gutong has the habit of eating and dashing." The resentment in that disciple's eyes deepened, but after rummaging through his storage bracelet, he discovered that there was still a gap to the amount of 1 divine grade spirit stone. In truth, no matter which sect it was, to the higher-ups, a few 100 million or even a few billion divine grade spirit stones were nothing, but to the disciples, 1 divine grade spirit stone was not a small amount. After a brief moment of awkwardness, that disciple cupped his fists at Yu Qianqiu. "I hope, sect master, you can be magnanimous. Allow me to go back and retrieve the money." Yu Qianqiu turned around, silently eating his food by the spoonful, ignoring that disciple, letting him do as he saw fit. The hunchbacked old man smiled at that disciple. It's fine, 1 bowl of food, it's free, no charge." That disciple looked at Yu Qianqiu, gritting his teeth, and flew away without a word. As the saying goes, good news never goes out, but bad news travels 1,000 li. While the crowd was watching Yu Qianqiu slowly eating his food, whispers and whispers could be heard. Several lights flickered in the air. The Wan Gutong disciple who had just run away was dragged back by someone. The person in the lead was none other than the Wan Gutong elder overseeing this place, Wan Ge. Seeing Yu Qianqiu, Wan Ge broke out in laughter. "Sect Master Yu is indeed in a good mood, actually hiding here to enjoy delicious food." "It's not really in a good mood, just stealing half a day of leisure." Yu Qianqiu also laughed heartily, as if nothing had happened between the two of them. Wan Ge walked up to Yu Qianqiu, noticing the oily green stuff in his bowl. He clicked his tongue in surprise. "What is this stuff? How come I've never seen it before?" Then he waved his hand at the grandfather and grandson. "Come, give me a bowl too." He sat down opposite Yu Qianqiu. When the bowl of green clear food was placed on the table, Wang Gei took a small sip and nodded. It really has a unique flavor. Then he put down the spoon in his hand, ready to get down to business. He looked at Yu Qianqiu with a wide smile. I wonder what my sect's disciple did to offend you, making you, great sect master you, personally make a move. I've already brought the person here, have him apologize to you? Both of them were smart people. It was easy to understand the meaning behind Wang Gei's words. On the surface, Wang Gei said he was here to apologize, but in reality, he was here to ask, you injured my, Wan Gu Tong's, disciple just for a piece of divine grade treasure? Aren't you not giving my Wan Gu Tong face? Wang Gei also understood that he couldn't do anything to Yu Qianqiu, but as the sect master overseeing this place, if he didn't say anything when his disciple was beaten up, he would lose face. He also believed that Yu Qianqiu was not an idiot. He would at least give him some face and let him step down. Who would have thought that Yu Qianqiu would tilt his head to look at the disciple, nonchalantly saying, there's no need for an apology. In my opinion, this kind of shameless disciple is a scourge if you keep him around, and it's also a disgrace to you, Wan Gu Tong. Why don't you just kill him and end all troubles once and for all? The moment Wang Gei said that, the disciple panicked, looking nervously at Wang Gei. Wang Gei's face tightened slightly, his voice solemn. Sect master use words, I don't understand. Then why don't you ask him what he did? Yu Qianqiu harumphed coldly, snickering coldly as he said, the food is clearly priced. You can choose not to eat it if you don't have money. It's not like it's something you can't live without. It doesn't matter if you don't have money to eat it. With your face as elder one overseeing this place, I'll pay for it on his behalf without him even asking. What's more hateful is that he actually accused Wang Gei of swindling people, saying that Wang Gei's guts aren't small, daring to swindle Wan Gu Tong's people, using this as a pretext to grope the little girl in front of everyone, and even treating this old man like he's the same kind of trash. This is intolerable. Luckily this happened in the hallucinatory immortal city, otherwise this old man would have killed him on the spot. So that's how it is. The surrounding crowd hissed. Wang Gei tilted his head, glaring coldly at the disciple, barking, is sect master Yu's words true? The disciple stuttered with fear, stammering. Wang Gei sneered, you really dare to give our Wan Gu Tong face, cripple his cultivation, and request the sect master to expel him from the sect. Being the overseer of this place, he had the authority to enforce the law, but he didn't have the authority to expel a disciple from the sect. I know I was wrong, elder, spare me, ah. A miserable shriek rang out, the disciple wilted on the spot. His dantian was shattered by an expert from the same sect, his cultivation was crippled, and he was carried away by the other sect master. In the immortal world, this was merely the tragic end of a small fry that couldn't even cause a ripple. To those big shots, for the sake of their own reputation or the reputation of their organization, or for other reasons, the lives of small fries were nothing more than something they could casually take, not worth mentioning. However, it was enough to make those small fries tremble with fear, thinking that Wan Gu Tong was strict in enforcing the law, but in truth, there were countless disciples like this in the big sections. That disciple was just unlucky enough to run into Yu Qianqiu's hands. The little girl in green who was hiding behind her grandfather would occasionally poke her head out to look at Yu Qianqiu, her eyes brimming with curiosity. Wang Gei waved his hand, the other disciples immediately turned into streaks of light and left. With a wave of his hand, this matter was over. Wang Gei then asked curiously, Sect Master Yu, I heard that the immortal emperor personally sent a decree to you, I wonder if it's true. The people who were watching the commotion all perked up their ears. It's just a rumor. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand humbly. At this time, 3 more golden streaks of light appeared, the one in the lead was the great bright wheel. Yu Qianqiu and Wang Gei immediately stood up, bowing respectfully, greetings to the great bright wheel master. The surroundings instantly fell into silence. The great bright wheel snorted coldly, Yu Qianqiu, you really have guts, actually daring to hit people in my hallucinatory immortal city. Just when everyone was thinking that Yu Qianqiu was going to be out of luck, the great bright wheel's hand behind the great bright wheel's back dropped, slapping 2 items onto the table, saying indifferently, "I've already brought the items you wanted. Today, on account of the immortal emperor, I won't argue with you, but if there's a next time, I won't let you off so easily." Chapter 988. These were the words he said on the surface, but he also secretly transmitted his voice. "Brat, don't cause trouble in my territory. Why do I have so many reasons to protect you? How am I going to manage others in the future?" The great bright wheel was gritting his teeth in anger. From this, it could be seen that he really treated Yu Qianqiu as one of his own because of Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng. If it was someone else, he would have taken care of them long ago. As long as they broke the rules, which sect would dare to reason with him? These words caused Yu Qianqiu to blush with shame. He felt that he had let the other party down. He wanted to say something to defend himself, but the great bright will only let out a cold harumph. The 3 rays of light flew back to the Merchant Association. The surroundings were completely silent. The great bright wheel's words shocked everyone. The meaning of "for the immortal emperor's sake" undoubtedly proved the rumors in the hallucinatory immortal city. It confirmed that Yu Qianqiu had indeed received the immortal emperor's decree to carry out a mission. At this moment, all sorts of expressions appeared on everyone's faces. Most of them were envious. Actually, Yu Qianqiu was a little surprised that the great bright will brought out the immortal emperor. He didn't know that the great bright will was not only helping him cover up the fight in the hallucinatory immortal city, it was also helping him get rid of some troubles, such as the Heartless Palace. This was the brilliance of the great bright wheel. He could guarantee his own position and help his own people without leaving any traces. At this moment, everyone's eyes were on the 2 items that the great bright wheel threw on the table. A storage bracelet and a token. Wang Gei stood in front and immediately recognized what this token was. He immediately said in shock, "Netherworld token?" He looked at Yu Qianqiu in confusion. He didn't know why the great bright will gave this to him. So this was the Netherworld token. Yu Qianqiu picked up the palm-sized token on the table and looked at it. There was a mix of gold and black. He used the metal seal to check and found that it was actually a mix of nether iron and gold. The design of the token was actually very simple. It was surrounded by cloud patterns, and one side was engraved with the word "immortal," while the other side was engraved with the word "nether." However, the proportion of nether iron and gold mixed together was so well proportioned that even an average refiner would find it difficult to achieve. Yu Qianqiu even suspected that the person who made this token was also proficient in the gold incantation art. However, after thinking about it, he felt that it was unlikely. The gold incantation art was created by him, and he only taught it to Hong Qi. Seeing that everyone was staring at him, he casually put away the Netherworld Passage token. Huang Xiaolong then picked up the storage bracelet. It was filled to the brim with divine-grade spirit stones. Without even counting, one storage bracelet could hold exactly 10 billion spirit stones. The immortal palace was so rich, yet they only gave 10 billion. How stingy! Yu Qianqiu muttered under his breath, then took out a handful of divine-grade spirit stones and put away the storage bracelet. Huang Xiaolong then beckoned to the green-clothed little girl who was looking at him curiously from behind his grandfather, signaling her to come over. The green-clothed little girl immediately shrunk her head back, but the hunchbacked old man pulled her out with a smile, hinting that it was fine for her to go over. The green-clothed little girl was very obedient to her grandfather's words. She slowly moved over with some apprehension, looking at Yu Qianqiu with a puzzled expression. "Stretch out your hand," Yu Qianqiu said, waving the handful of spirit stones in his hand. The green-clothed little girl's eyes lit up. Biting her lower lip, she obediently stretched out her delicate little hand, her 5 fingers adorable and delicate. 2 hands. Yu Qianqiu laughed heartily. The little girl obediently stretched out her hands, and all the spirit stones in Yu Qianqiu's hands were put into her hands. She held the spirit stones in her hands, and without saying anything, she excitedly ran back to her grandfather's side. "It's too much, I don't need so much," the hunchbacked old man said fearfully, signaling the little girl to return the extra spirit stones to Yu Qianqiu. Causing trouble for you, it's only right. Yu Qianqiu nodded at Wang Ge, then the two of them turned into a streak of light and flew away. As the two of them left, the onlookers went about their own business, whispering to each other about the immortal emperor's decree to Yu Qianqiu. No one cared about the ordinary grandfather-granddaughter duo. There were also some who wanted to try the green liquor the grandfather-granddaughter duo was selling because of what happened earlier, but the grandfather-granddaughter duo's action of packing up the stall dispelled their thoughts. The hunchbacked old man kept all the things on the stall into his storage bracelet, then pulled his granddaughter and flew out of the hallucinatory immortal city at a moderate pace. Many people only raised their heads to take a glance, then continued with their own business. To most people, there was nothing to be concerned about small fries, and they were even dismissive of them. What they were interested in were the interesting things that happened between the big shots. In a remote valley far away from the hallucinatory immortal city, the mountains were barren, the vegetation was barren, and the rocks were craggy. However, it seemed very quiet. The grandfather-granddaughter duo landed on the ground and slowly walked into the depths of the valley. As they walked, a wooden staff suddenly appeared in the hunchbacked old man's swinging hand. The wooden staff seemed to be made from two entangled tree roots, and the brown wooden staff's head was like a large Ganoderma, which looked very strange. The hunchbacked old man walked slowly with the help of the walking stick, his hunched back gradually straightened, and the outline of his body slowly became tall and sturdy. A cool mountain breeze blew over, and his white hair and beard gently fluttered. The drooping skin on his face silently tightened, and his complexion became rosy and smooth. His turbid eyes suddenly became clear and transparent, and his determined eyes revealed the vicissitudes and wisdom of seeing through the mortal world. At this moment, anyone could tell that he was the hunchbacked old man who bowed and scraped in the hallucinatory immortal city. The aura between the two of them instantly became like two different people. Two images, one was like a poor old man who was living a destitute life, and the other was like an earth immortal who possessed great wisdom and transcended the mortal world. Unfortunately, no one could see the changes that occurred to the old man. In fact, if the old man didn't want others to see it, then how many people in this world could? On the other hand, the green-clothed little girl didn't show the slightest change. However, she wasn't surprised by the change in her grandfather, and it was obvious that she was used to it. Her green dress fluttered in the wind as she happily skipped through the craggy valley as if she was walking on flat ground. The wind fluttered her green dress, and she seemed like a celestial child that had descended to the mortal world. She played with two black spirit stones in her hands, and she occasionally raised her head to block the spirit stones in front of her eyes to look at the blue sky. She would occasionally let out a cheerful chuckle. "Grandfather, when are we going to set up the stall again?" The green-clothed little girl suddenly tilted her head and asked. The sturdy old man, who was walking with the crutch, suddenly stopped and looked at the little girl who was skipping happily in front of him with a complicated expression. The green-clothed little girl suddenly realized that her grandfather's figure had disappeared from her side. She stopped abruptly and turned her head to look. Seeing that her grandfather had stopped moving, she happily skipped back again. She pulled on her grandfather's crutch and asked curiously, "Grandfather, why aren't you walking?" The old man smiled faintly and said, "Lu Er, do you like to play in the world?" The little girl called Lu Er tilted her head and thought for a while. She nodded her head innocently and said, "I like it." "Why do you like it?" "Because there are a lot of people. It's very lively." Lu Er waved her hands and made a gesture of many people. "There are a lot of people. Aren't you afraid of meeting the bad guys that grandfather told you about? Like the bad guys who didn't pay for your food and scared you. But there are also good people." Lu Er held a spirit stone in each hand and waved it with a smile that was like a flower. She said, "That person called Yu Qianqiu is a good person. A good person will help me beat up a bad person." As she said that, she made a trumpet shape with her hands and shouted towards the valley in the distance, "Yu Qianqiu, you are a good person." Somewhere in the distance, someone was talking to someone when he suddenly sneezed and cursed, F***ck. "Who is cursing me? It must be that old bastard Grey Cloud Xian." After a cheerful shout, Lu happily jumped onto a rock. She spread her arms wide open on the rock and danced around in circles while giggling. She looked innocent and pure. The mountain wind blew her green skirt, and she was as light as a green butterfly that was about to flap its wings and fly. Then, a miraculous thing happened. In this desolate valley, wherever her delicate hands pointed to, the withered wild grass suddenly exploded with new vitality and grew at a visible speed. The withered yellow disappeared, and the emerald green wild grass swayed, at the point of her fingers. The broken rottenwood instantly experienced spring again. The tender green branches sprouted out and quickly grew thicker. New sprouts quickly bloomed on the branches. In a short while, the withered tree once again exploded with exuberant vitality. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a green tree, finger. The old branches of the withered wildflowers were growing healthily. It was clearly past the flowering season, but the flower buds were popping out one by one. They shyly bloomed all over the branches, and it was a beautiful sight, finger. The green vine was like a snake that had awoken from hibernation. It quickly burrowed out from the ground, dragging the green leaves that kept emerging from its body as it climbed all over the hills and slopes. This scene was so miraculous and inconceivable. In the snap of Lu Er's fingers, there was a huge change. With her as the center, the desolate valley was overflowing with spring in the blink of an eye. Green trees formed shade, fragrant grass covered the ground, and hundreds of flowers bloomed. The desolate valley became a green field, making people feel relaxed and happy. Unfortunately, there was only one spectator in this scene. However, this spectator seemed to be used to this scene and did not even look at it. He pointed the wooden staff in his hand at the ground in front of him and said, "Lu Er, stop messing around." The cheerful Lu Er stuck out her tongue and jumped down from the rock. She obediently stood at the place her grandfather pointed at. The old man frowned and said, "Lu Er, remember this. In the future, without my permission, you are not allowed to run out again. Especially you are not allowed to see that person called you Qianqiu again." Lu Er blinked and asked doubtfully, "Why?" The old man said with a serious expression, "Because he is the worst person. He is also the person who can hurt you the most. You have to stay far away from him." "Why?" Lu Er pouted disapprovingly and said, "But I don't feel any malice from him." When the old man heard this, he immediately raised his wooden cane and tapped it on Lu Er's forehead. He warned solemnly, "Lu Er, remember this. Anyone who can smell the fragrance on your body is a bad person. These people are not ordinary people. They will cause you great harm. You have to stay far away from them. Remember?" Chapter 989. Is there a fragrance on my body? Lu Er raised her arm and sniffed. She avoided the main point and said, "Why can't I smell it?" Dong. This time, the old man unceremoniously knocked Lu Er's head with his cane, causing her to cover her head and cry. The old man said angrily, "Even if you're curious, there must be a bottom line. You were bribed by him with a few spirit stones. Grandpa has lived for so long and has seen too much. Don't you know what's good and what's bad? Do you think Grandpa will lie to you? Remember Grandpa's words, stay away from that person called you Qianqiu. He's very dangerous. If you dare to disobey Grandpa, Grandpa will never let you come out to play." "Oh," Lu Er said dejectedly. The old man wanted to scold her again, but he suddenly looked around and frowned. "You little girl, you're messing around. You leaked the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and alarmed someone. Let's go back first to avoid chattering." He raised his staff and pointed at the empty air. The air in front of the two of them immediately faintly rippled with a pale green profound light. The old man grabbed Lu Er's arm and stepped into the profound light. The two of them immediately disappeared without a trace. The door of light disappeared into the air, and the valley was empty. Not long after the two of them disappeared, a golden light flashed in the distant sky. It was frighteningly fast, and in the blink of an eye, it landed in the valley. The newcomer stood steadily on the rock that Lu Er had just been dancing on. He wore a gorgeous golden robe embroidered with a sea of coiling dragons and clouds. He wore a hollowed-out golden crown with complicated patterns. 2 thick eyebrows slanted to the left and right of his forehead. His nose was straight like an eagle's hook, and his lips were thin like 2 blades. His entire body was covered in a thin layer of golden light that was like a curling mist, making people feel intimidated. His entire person was imposing, and his slender eyes emitted a cold light that could take one's soul. The newcomer's cold gaze quickly scanned the entire valley. His perception quickly enveloped the entire valley like a tide. The nearby plants and flowers moved without wind, rising and falling like waves. However, he did not discover anything. Of course, it was not that he did not discover anything unusual. The 2 ends of the valley were barren. Only the area around him was overflowing with greenery. One look and he knew something was strange. "I thought you called me out to meet." Strange. When has Old Man Moo ever done something so senseless? The person glanced at the surroundings again and muttered with a frown, "Why are you hiding?" "I have no ill intentions towards you. I just want to ask you about some things." Sigh. With a long sigh, the person turned into a streak of golden light and disappeared into the distant horizon in the blink of an eye. No one knew what had happened in this remote valley. Yu Qianqiu didn't know that he had been talked about here. He had just come out from the Wangu Tong branch, and Wang Gei had personally sent him to the entrance. The 2 of them looked up at the sky almost at the same time. The 4 heartless palace disciples who had been staring at Yu Qianqiu had disappeared. Wang Gei chuckled and said, "It seems that Ash Grey Cloud Trust has also retreated and withdrawn his people. I thought he really had the guts to go against the Immortal Palace." Yu Qianqiu immediately rolled his eyes and said, "What do you mean by that? What does my business with him have to do with the Immortal Palace? I, Yu Qianqiu, am an upright person. I will never use my power to oppress others." He looked in the direction of the Heartless Palace branch and said in a low voice, "I am preparing to make a trip to the Heartless Palace to see if the grudge between me and him can be resolved." Haha. Wang Gei smiled and nodded. He thought to himself, "You call this not using your power to oppress others? Why didn't I see you looking for him to resolve your grudge in the past?" Of course, he definitely wouldn't say this out loud. After sending Yu Qianqiu off with cupped fists, he couldn't help but frown and mumble to himself, "Why is this guy asking about the casting of the body in the 72 worlds?" After thinking for a while, he still couldn't figure it out, so he shook his head and walked in quickly. He still had to pass on the news to the Wangu Tong Palace. Outside the Heartless Palace branch, the people going in and out stopped at the entrance and whispered to each other. They watched as Yu Qianqiu slowly walked in with his hands clasped behind his back. They couldn't figure out what he was doing here. Those who had come to buy things and were about to leave didn't leave either. They all stayed to watch the show. A disciple of the Heartless Palace had already discovered him and quickly ran back inside to report it. Therefore, before Yu Qianqiu could step into the Heartless Palace branch, he was blocked at the entrance by Zhang Yun Xian and his people. Zhang Yun Xian's face darkened. He gritted his teeth and said, "What are you doing here?" He was worried now. He was worried that this fearless guy would purposely come here to cause trouble because he had received the Celestial Emperor's decree. However, he couldn't touch this guy now. Honored Zhang Yun, long time no see. Yu Qianqiu smiled and cupped his fists. "I am here to apologize to you. I hope you won't pursue what happened in the past." Everyone looked at each other. No matter how they listened, it was a little boring. Zhang Yun Xian's face darkened. He snorted and said, "Don't give me that. If you have something to say, say it. If you have anything to say, say it." He didn't believe that this guy was here to apologize. Moreover, the grudge between them wasn't something that could be resolved with just an apology. Yu Qianqiu looked at the people behind him. He turned back and said with a smile, "Look at this public place. It's inconvenient to say some things here. Let's talk inside." Then, he walked inside. Zhang Yun Xian had never seen such a shameless person. He immediately stopped him. If you want to say it, then say it here. If not, then scram. I don't welcome you here. Sangyun Xian, don't be too ruthless. Yu Qianqiu slowly took a few steps back. He said in a low voice, yes, I killed your grandson. But even if you kill me, your grandson can't come back to life. As the saying goes, it's better to squash enmity than keep it alive. Moreover, I helped you a lot. It's enough to cancel out the grudge. Why do you insist on biting me? You've done me a huge favor. Sangyun Xian was startled. He then sneered. Are you kidding me? Stop talking nonsense. Scram. I don't welcome you here. Hee hee. What an ungrateful fella. Yu Qianqiu placed his hands on his waist. You dare to say that if it wasn't for me, you could have broken through to the middle stage of Immortal Emperor? You dare to say that if it wasn't for me, you could have mastered the 3 swords into 1 sword stance? I only hate that I didn't kill you back then. Sangyun Xian gritted his teeth. So you're saying that the grudge between us can't be resolved? Yu Qianqiu said in a low voice. Sangyun Xian shouted. That's right. Forget it. It's fine if it can't be resolved. Yu Qianqiu's expression instantly brightened up. He generously waved his hand and gently said, Today, I came to discuss cooperation with you. He was like a completely different person from a moment ago. Not interested. Sangyun Xian couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with this fella. He turned and walked into the hall. He said, Disciples of Heartless Palace, listen up. Don't let him in. If he dares to force his way in, inform the Merchant Association to uphold justice. He had no choice. He couldn't attack this fella in the current situation. Everyone's eyes were on Yu Qianqiu. They didn't know if this fella would really force his way in. Sigh. Why do you have to do this? Yu Qianqiu shook his head and sighed. To everyone's surprise, he turned around and flew away in a streak of light. Yu Qianqiu landed in front of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance's gate. He walked to the gate and took out the World Commerce Chamber's token. He waved it at the 2 guards at the gate and said, World Commerce Chamber's Sect Master Yu Qianqiu requests an audience with the Great Bright Will Executor. Wait a minute. The guard threw down this sentence and went in to report. Not long later, he came out and waved his hand. Controller wants you to find him in the backyard. Yu Qianqiu walked into the Merchant Association and looked around. He passed through the main hall and came to the backyard. He saw the Great Bright Will sitting cross-legged on a stone platform under an old tree. Yu Qianqiu went over and bowed. Greetings, Controller. The Great Bright Will slowly opened its eyes and looked at him. It frowned. Why do you want to see me? I'm warning you, don't think you can swindle the Immortal Palace just because you received the Immortal Emperor's decree. You'll die a horrible death sooner or later. He guessed that this fella didn't come here for anything good. Maybe it was to ask for something. What are you saying? Am I the kind of person who wants a yard after taking an inch? Yu Qianqiu smiled. Deming Luan snorted noncommittally and said indifferently, If you have something to say it quickly. It's like this. Yu Qianqiu rubbed his hands and laughed. Look, I'm going out to collect some local customs in order to compose a song that will be passed down through the ages for the Immortal Emperor's wedding. Can you ask the Immortal Palace to send a message to the Heartless Palace to send the Great Elder, Sangyun Xian, to protect me and accompany me to collect local customs? Deming Luan was stunned. He had long been thinking about Yu Qianqiu's intentions for coming. He had thought about everything, but no matter how hard he thought, he couldn't think of why Yu Qianqiu would make such a request. After a while, the Great Bright Will sneered. You must be out of your mind. Everyone knows you have a grudge against Sangyun Xian. What reason do I have to report to the Immortal Palace to send such a decree to the Heartless Palace? It's because I have a grudge against Sangyun Xian that I picked him. Yu Qianqiu shook his head with a bitter smile. Think about it. I'm going to the Netherworld to collect local customs. You should know better than me how dangerous the Netherworld is. If there's no master to protect me, I'm afraid I won't even know how I died. Most importantly, it's easy to dodge a spear in the open but hard to guard against a stab in the dark. I'm afraid that there's someone in a high position who doesn't dare to make a move against me in the celestial world but will do something to me in the netherworld. If the immortal palace sends Songyun Xian to protect me and something happens to me in the netherworld and ruin the immortal emperor's plan, he won't be able to escape punishment. Plus, I'm always on edge thinking that there's a master who wants to do something to me. I can't concentrate on composing a song for the immortal emperor. In short, he was the most reasonable person in the world. The reason why he went to talk to Songyun Xian about reconciliation and cooperation was to get Songyun Xian to protect him. Who knew that Songyun Xian wouldn't even give him a chance to continue talking? So he asked the Great Bright Will to ask the Immortal Palace to pressure the Heartless Palace. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.